In order to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Wesleyan Methodist. Mr. Wesleyan.
Yeah, Mr. Wesleyan's good. No, thank you for this opportunity to pray for you. If we'd bow our heads, I'm going to start from Proverbs. Indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as for silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He guards the course of the just and protects the way of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. Heavenly Father, I thank you for our city leaders. I thank you for their readiness to serve for the sake of others. Father, I pray you'd continue to guide them in what should be priority. And as they focus, Lord, I pray that you would bring the right data and information across their paths, and then give them wisdom to put good plans into motion that would lead to health for our community and opportunity and prosperity. I pray this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Sabers.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Dosher. McCardle.
Here.
Barrington.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Sharks. Here. Smith.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on the consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion at the beginning of formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove? Any comments on it? Okay. we'll
Move
entertain a
approval
motion.
of this consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Chark, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Outcast Car Club, do you want to come up and give a plug for your, while you're closing the street, et cetera?
Sure. How you guys doing tonight? Good. Beautiful day it was. A little windy, but that's normal now, so.
Walleye chop.
Well, it's going to be number 18, isn't it? 18 years this car show's been going on. We took it over last year, and we just did a one-day show because we were kind of nervous being newbies. The Outcast did such a good job doing it for the last 17, and it turned out really well. We had a beautiful day. Lots of cars showed up. I think we had a total of 150 vehicles. No incidents, except for, like they did the year before. We had somebody trying to go to the bar that got mad at us, but we're hoping to have even more cars this year. This year we did open it up to 1987 and older. So that's going to give us a whole nother decade of cars that we didn't get in before, like Camaros, Mustangs, square body Chevys, everything that we grew up with. So we're kind of excited and we're kind of scared because it might really blow up because there's a lot of those cars out there. So we're hoping for the blow up though, because we'll just take it in stride, and I'm sure the community will come together and help out. So, but we just wanted to have the opportunity to say thank you for letting us do this again, if it's possible, and we hope that it's going to just keep going, and we'll be back every year to say thank you again.
Why don't you give us the dates?
This year it is going to be on the 7th. Is it the 17th? Yep. So that is the actual Saturday, but Friday we're going to do a cruise night like we did last year on Main Street from 7 to 9. And then we also got Hitchcock Park's picnic shelter for Sunday. We're going to have coffee and rods in the morning. So we'll just everybody sit around the park, and hopefully it'll be nice weather, and we'll have coffee and donuts and go from there. So 3 day. We're going to go for 3 days this year.
Good. Good luck.
And we're just going to keep trying to make it grow bigger and bigger. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay. Any other discussion on consent agenda items? Roll call, please.
Dosher. McCardle. Barrington.
Aye.
Allen. Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries. Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor, members of city council, an item that is not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no further action will be taken. Anybody wish to address council? Okay. Board of Adjustment, entertain a motion for City Council recess to this Board of Adjustment. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing and action on application for Biehler. Carrie and Darlene Biehler have applied for a variance permit for an attached garage and accessory building combination of 2,160 square feet versus 2,000 square feet, and a maximum height for an accessory building of 30 feet versus 22 feet located at 600 Green Ridge Lane, legally described Lot 3, Block 2, Green Ridge Addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, real property zone R1. Mr. Jenigas.
Mayor and council, Planning Commission recommended denial of both of the variances 3-1. Discussion during the commissions was actually, it was tabled at 3:14 because they wanted more answers from the applicants. They weren't at the first one, so it went to 3:28. Discussion during that was the size of it, what's the hardship versus just being within the setbacks that are per the ordinance. You did receive 2 more letters since the packet was published, from one letter against from Borman's, one from Biehler's. The one from Biehler's had a different size. It was 26 versus the 30 that was original, and 2110 versus the 2160 from the original. I can answer any questions you have. They are here if you have any more questions for them at all.
So they want to reduce the height from 30 to 26.
Yep, that's my understanding, yes.
And they want to reduce the square footage from
2160 to 2110.
Mark, by reducing the height of it, and they're going to have a submerged lower level, why don't they submerge the lower level a little more and meet the height variance, the height restriction?
The height goes from garage elevation floor to the peak of it. So moving everything down, yes, it would change the overall height of it to be lower, but yet it still goes from ground floor to that peak of the roof.
But yet the garage that would only be seen by people from the east, and there's nobody from the east, correct?
Correct. It's open field to the east, yep. But I see that their designer is here as well, so maybe he can speak better to that than I can.
Because as I understand it, that building is going to sit to the south of their house, and the garage, see how it's, the garage doors on the east side are halfway submerged.
Yep. There's a big drop off in the ground there. That's why they can have the wraparound and have spancrete on there. So that way there's no beams or posts in the basement. I'll say basement, but it's really the garage floor on the bottom. So there's no posts there, so it's an open span. Then the ground level will be a garage, and then up above it will be recreational space. If you move the garage elevation floor, the main one, down, you still have the same height, even though some of the groundwork around it might be up a little bit. And also you could have some drainage issues with water going into the garage by sloping your driveway into your garage.
And during testimony at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they said that they were not interested in, they're asking for a variance of the, what was it, 30 feet, and they weren't willing to reconsider anything else. Now you're telling me they're having a different consideration?
Yes, we got an email. I think all of council did as well.
Yep, you guys received it all as well.
Did,
Yep.
And Mr. Biehler, you want to come up and talk to that? Or, oh, there you are. Explain what you've come up with now, please.
Hello, Carrie Biehler and my wife Darlene. Well, since the zoning commission, we received neighbor feedback that they weren't in favor of the height that we were requesting. So, in respect of our neighbors, we decided to go back and see what we could do about dropping the height while still maintaining our desired ability to have upright walk-around space above the garage. We want to be able to access with a stairway, rather than going through an attic hatch, into the rafters. So that's really what we're desiring to have.
So you're able to bring it down to 26 feet, the peak?
Yes, we can do that. We changed the pitch of the roof and, made some minor adjustments, and I guess we didn't anticipate that the 30 was as big of a deal as it seemed like it was, and so we've made the adjustments.
If this is a non-living, you're not going to be living in here, are you?
No. It's for personal use, recreation, storage. We're not renting it, we're not living in it. We have a beautiful house next door, we're not going in.
And that's one of the questions I had from some of the neighbors, that they were concerned that you could be maybe living in it, but you put that on record and you're not good.
We're not living in it.
Okay.
So Carrie, obviously with your compromising of 30 to 26, since then, have you had conversations with the neighbors, or has there been more feedback from them saying that they obviously respectfully appreciate your change and acceptable to that change yet, or was it still unsatisfiable in their needs?
So we have talked to a couple of our neighbors who didn't have a problem with the 30 feet. At least 3 didn't have a problem at 30 feet. If you look at the minutes from the zoning committee, one of the big issues that Mr. Huber had was the height. He thought it would peek through the trees. At 26 feet, it will not peek through the trees. And so we thought that that was a compromise. We have not heard from, we tried to contact Terry Howell. I see she's here, but she didn't respond to my texts or my phone calls. And for personal reasons, I will not talk to Connie Borman. So, there you go. Okay?
Well, I think it's important that, I hope you had reached out to the neighbors to get their input with the lower half. Anytime it comes to council that the Planning and Zoning Commission denies the variance, and we have so many negative comments from neighbors, we have to take that into consideration.
I'd like to add one more thing. The rules that we're being asked to follow is that if the neighbor does not return an objection, then that is considered an approval. And so we have 3 neighbors who sent out an objection: the Bormans, the Howells, and the Hubers. And we have spoke with the Hubers. He told us what his objection is. We've tried to work within that. Again, the Howells will not return my call. She's here now. Maybe she could tell you what her objection is. And I will not talk to Connie Borman. Okay?
And as you talk to the Hubers, what did they say?
Any discussion with the Hubers since?
Not
the change?
since we've made modifications. Now, there is, in the message we sent out, we looked at height and compared it to the neighbors' garages, okay? And I make reference to height above the gutter in the street. So our neighbor to the west, who's complaining about the height, their garage is 3 feet above the gutter height. Our proposal is 2 feet below the gutter height. So if you take 26 feet of vertical dimension to the ridge line and compare that to hers, the ridge lines, would be basically identical. So I presume the 22 feet code is to keep uniformity in the neighborhood as to what is in there. I don't know either, but I presume that to be the case. So if we go on that presumption, then we should be in compliance with the spirit of the 22-foot height limitation, at least, to keep it uniform.
Any other questions for Mr. Biehler?
I'd like to move approval of the variance.
Okay.
Just that there are no living quarters, and that they reduce the height to the 26 from the 30.
Okay.
That was originally requested.
And you don't have any trouble with the oversize, correct?
I do not.
Okay. Motion by Mrs. Charks,
Second.
second by Mr. Barrington. Okay?
So, one question, and there might be others that may want to come in and give their input before we vote, obviously, but Justin, since this is coming back from the Planning Commission, they denied it on the 30 feet, are you comfortable with making the changes and presenting it to us to decide if that is a sufficient decrease or not?
Yeah, I guess if the question is whether this should go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, no, I don't think that that's necessary. Ultimately, any opinions that they give are just advisory. So they're making recommendations to approve or recommendations to deny. So I think the council is probably well aware of why they voted the way that they did. I think it's certainly within your discretion to be able to make the decision tonight if that's what you'd like to do.
And it's also less restrictive than, if they wanted to go to 32 feet instead of the 30, since they're going down 26, it doesn't have to be noticed again because of that, because it's less than what it was.
I will remind you that this is a Board of Adjustment, requires 6 approvals, or yea votes to pass, just so you know.
If any of the people are here that were objecting, I'd like to hear their...
We will. We'll let them, we'll open it up for commentary right now. Anybody else want to address this? Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Greg Borman, and I live in the house on the just west of Biehler's. I guess we objected to the plan in the garage because of the height. We thought it was too tall, too big. It also has a tin roof on it that doesn't match the neighborhood or the house. The garage we have matches our house. It has the same shingles, it has the same height of sidewalls, has the same windows, it has the same garage doors, and it matches. And I guess this doesn't really, in my opinion, fit in the neighborhood. It's close to the curb. It's probably the first thing you'll see when you drive down the cul-de-sac. And I don't think it, I guess we still disapprove of it. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Borman? Thank you. Come on up.
Matt Healy. I just wanted to point out too that in this revised plan that we did for the Biehlers, we did push it further away from the cul-de-sac. So I don't know if that site plan is available, but it is now further away too. So that should help address. It went at least another 44 feet to the east. So 44 feet further.
90 feet.
Yeah, yep, 90 feet now from the curb, so I just wanted to touch on that.
And 70 feet from the nearest property line.
There's a drainage area that goes on the east or south side of that property. Does that affect that drainage area?
Not at all.
No, we're further to the north of that, so.
70 feet from the drainage easement.
The drainage easement, the triple lines you see there on the side.
Yeah, the 2 red lines represent the easement that's going across the property line, yep.
And do you want to address the material that's being used for the roof?
So right now, the house has ephes on it with stone. It's been all redone, looks really nice. The siding material for the garage is also going to match. The ephes will be the same, stone's planning to be the same, so it will be identical to the house. The original roof that we were looking at is a standing seam metal roof, which the Biehlers kind of addressed the reasons that they wanted to go to that as opposed to cedar shakes. If that ends up being a huge deal, obviously they can work out with, the covenants of what's going to be allowed, but as I guess right now, I don't know if that has to do with the variance that they're requesting. But other than that, everything matches. to
Right,
the
we
house.
don't
Yep.
address the covenants,
Right.
that's a civil
Yep,
issue.
Yep, yep. So, did the height between the finished floor of the neighbor's garage and Biehler's garage make sense to you guys? So from the gutter in the cul-de-sac itself, the finished floor of Biehler's garage was how much lower than the gutter?
2 feet.
2 feet lower, and the neighboring garage was another 3 feet above. So the finished floor of the garage is also, there's a 5-foot elevation difference between the two. So that's what ends up making the ridge lines of the two roofs pretty much plain out elevation-wise. If you were going to take like mean sea level, not necessarily from finished floor of each garage. So I just wanted to clarify that too. Any other questions?
I just want to add something too. If you put
Come
that-
up to the microphone because it goes out.
If you put that picture back up, it's more of an optical illusion, the last picture.
Darlene, state your name again.
Darlene Biehler, 600 Green Ridge Lane. So if you look at this, the building, as it sits in the picture, it depicts it further forward. So it creates an optical illusion. What our engineer suggested was that we take it and somehow try to figure out how we could show the exact way it sits. But unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to find someone to Photoshop that back in. So it really is far away from the driveway. And I'd like to note, too, we have no one behind us, we have no one to the north of us, and the people to the south of us are 420 feet away through wooded trees.
Anybody else wish to address this? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Sharks. Aye. Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Motion carries. Hearing an action on application for DLJ LLC. DLJ has applied for variance of approximately 867 feet versus 1,000 feet is required to be from another cannabis dispensary located at 501 East Juniper Avenue, legally described as Lot Solid or S3A, excluding east 63 feet, replat of Lot S in the northeast quarter of Section 27, Township 103 North, Range 60 West to the 5th primary reading, City of Metro Davidson County, South Dakota. Real property is zoned HB Highway Business. Mr. Jenigas.
Mayor and council, at last Board of Adjustment, it was tabled. 314 for Planning Commission, it was recommended denial 6-0 with one absent at that meeting. Concerns from neighboring properties is value, more crime in the area, too close to the property lines. It sits property line now, including right-of-ways. I know the applicant is here and opposition is here for you as well. I can answer any questions. Everything that I've received from any applicant or neighbors or anything, it's all in the packet. Nothing new since the packet was published.
Aren't we tabling this?
Hey,
Yeah.
hold on.
So,
Mr. Livesay.
I know
would you like
nothing.
to come up and speak to this quick? Sure. Okay. Stay with the program, gents and ladies. I know you want to keep it moving.
Hi, my name is Don Livesay. I'm representing DLJ LLC. Thank you for your time. I would ask that there's two issues up tonight in front of council. One, approval of the application, and one, approval of a variance. What I simply would be asking for, if the variance would be denied, I would ask that my application could go into a tabling or a continuance where I could find a different location. And that's all I have on that, so.
That clear it up for you? Okay.
so yeah, and I had some conversation with Don just about an hour or so ago. He stopped in, and what it sounds like is he's okay with the council acting on the variance tonight, one way or the other, depending on how the hearings and everything go. But if it was denied, he would like some time to be able to revise his actual application and bring back a possible different location. So I think the council would be okay to act on the variance tonight, and then depending on how that one goes, I think that's going to affect what he'd be asking you to do on the application itself.
And we talked about that, I think, a month or two ago, that we would give him time if somebody wouldn't lose his place in line for his application.
How much time do you think you'd need?
That's a good question. I have been actually looking for different locations all through the application process. There's not a lot available, believe it or not. I've worked with real estate professionals in the city, some city officials also, but the application process, and Justin, maybe you can back me up on this a little bit, is very lengthy. When you do find a location, a lot of renderings, and a lot to go through for the application. So to answer that correctly, I just don't know. I mean, I would say 3 to 4 months plus in reality.
As far as I'm concerned, this is an annual renewal. So I would be willing to give him the rest of the year, depending on what happens tonight. But to me, the license, he applied for it, he was one top 5, and I would be willing to give him the rest of the year, and then when it comes up for renewal, we can decide if we want to move it on, if he hasn't got anything put together. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, one thing I want to point out is part of the reason he's asking for a variance, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, I'm just telling you why it is, because he did not know, and none of them knew where the other locations were. So, you know, he made the effort to stay a distance away from others. Turned out he was 130-some feet short, so.
Yep.
Jeff, I'm not opposed to that either, if it does not go past. I mean, if it does happen to fail this evening, I'm not opposed at the end of the year either. You said it's renewed every year. I think that's an adequate amount of time. And with the industry the way it is on buying property, real estate, or even if you have to end up building something, it's not going to happen overnight, and hopefully you can get it done by the end of this year, to be honest with you. So I think that's adequate enough time, if not even enough, to be honest with you. But it's a good starting point.
Justin, legally?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a problem to grant some leave to amend that application. So I think what's in front of you right now is the variance request. So I think the first thing would be to address that, and then when we get to the license issue, we can come back and we can talk about, you know, how we want to handle that, depending on how the variance part goes.
Any other questions, Mr. Liveson? Thank you.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse too much here, so.
No. Thank you.
Okay. Wait till we have a motion, then we'll ask for the full discussion, okay?
You want a motion?
Yes.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny by Mr. Allen, a second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion. Okay, now if you want to come up.
Okay.
Hello, Nicholas Coomer, part owner of 419 East Juniper Avenue. I begin asking you to please follow the recommendations. Your appointed planning commission, which unanimously recommended that you deny the variance application requested for 501 East Juniper Avenue. Over the last several months, my family has emailed you and spoken in front of you at the Planning Commission and expressed our concerns with the 501 East Juniper Avenue variance request. I want to briefly provide a high-level summary of those concerns. First, approving the variance or making changes to the code through an ordinance to either subjectively measure from doorknobs or to reduce the buffer zone between two cannabis establishments erodes away the protections you've put in place to protect the citizens of the community. Remember, your job is to do what's in the best interest of the citizens, not the applicant. Having 3 of your 5 cannabis dispensaries within 3/4 of a mile is already a concentration. I urge you to not allow a 4th. There are other areas in town where the 2 remaining cannabis dispensary permits can go without jeopardizing the intentions you have when you establish the cannabis regulations in the first place. Allowing a concentration of dispensaries in one part of town directly impacts your citizens by reducing the assessed property values of the surrounding properties. Therefore, taxes for all of your residents would have to be increased to offset the decreased assessed property values of the properties in the saturated areas. Regarding your variance codes, approving the variance application would inherently go against your own variance regulations, say about not approving a variance that is contrary to the public's interest. And as your zoning codes also say, the public has an interest in not having a concentration in dispensaries in one part of town. Public's interests are harmed by approving the variance because of the decreased assessed valuations. The applicant cannot provide otherwise, therefore the variance should not be approved according to the variance codes. And the applicant has not proven that it is an unnecessary hardship by having to lease space from another landlord elsewhere in town. Next, I want to reiterate my previous points that the measuring from door instead of property lines are subjective and not feasible. Property lines are generally consistent and do not easily change. They can be changed with a lengthy public process, but this is not common. They are objective, not subjective. Building permits are very common, so are the renovations, the interior building layouts, and future buildings/expansions on properties, which often change the location of outside doors. If the measurement is from door to door instead of property lines, there is a chance the outside door location may change, and one of the doors of the cannabis establishments are being measured against. Measuring door to door would set a terrible precedent for future variance applications. Finally, I want to take a moment to express my family's concern of the location of 501 East Juniper Avenue for the cannabis dispensary use. The applicant submitted drawings is misleading and does not reflect the current situation in the area. My family has had the property surveyed, and we have no intentions of allowing the applicant to use our property for parking for its customers' vehicles. TK Electric, the business located on 419 East Juniper, has a lot of commercial vehicles, equipment, and some material stored outside the building. We are concerned that the cannabis dispensary will turn this normally quiet neighborhood after 6 p.m. into a busy area after dark. Because of that, we feel that we have no choice but to install a security fence around our property to protect the commercial vehicles, equipment, and material. The applicant is required to install security cameras to protect the property. However, the installed cameras are for the security and protection of the cannabis dispensary and not the neighborhood. With the security fence up, we are sure that the applicant will be able to use the west bay. We're not sure how the applicant will be able to use the west base of the building if their only off-street parking is on the west side. A calculation based on the city parking regulations and uses that the applicant will be required to have approximately 24 to 26 off-street parking stalls based on the building square footage and the occupancy type. The applicant's site does not have enough space for an access lane and parking along the west side. This will limit their parking to the north of the parking lot along the west side. Or this will limit the parking along the north lot where the setbacks do not allow for parking. Without a fence installed, we have no doubt the customers would park on our property, but again, we are concerned with protecting our property after working hours and will install a security fence if the applicant is approved. Please understand that the fence would not be installed as a retaliatory against the applicant. We wish the applicant and all business owners in Mitchell nothing but the best and successful endeavors. We are sincerely and deeply concerned that the parking of our vehicles, equipment, and property stored on the property is not a personal against the applicant. In addition, the high concentration in one part of town in 501 East Juniper Avenue is just a bad location for this type of use due to the lack of off-street parking and property around the building. Previous uses for this building have been more appropriate. Again, please remember that you serve all the residents of this great community and their best interest and serve not allowing the concentration of the cannabis dispensaries in one part of town. That's exactly why you passed cannabis regulations in the first place. Don't further erode away those by approving the variance or making further changes to the regulations in favor of a cannabis applicant and to determine of the rest of the community that you serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Coomer, and I am a partial owner of 419 East Juniper Ave. I'm here tonight to urge the City Council to deny this variance and to not entertain ways in which we can bend, twist, or change the rules in order to place this dispensary too close to the majority of the other dispensaries. If it isn't broken, then don't fix it. And you've already gone through the trouble of crafting an ordinance that works. The fairest thing to everyone is to abide by the rules we have already established. There is a reason why the only people who are in favor of this dispensary being too close to the others are those who either have or have had a stake in it. And there is a reason why, as more people realize what is going on here, the chorus of opposition is growing louder and angrier. Putting this dispensary too close to the others doesn't just harm my family. It doesn't just harm my friends. It doesn't just harm my neighborhood. It harms my community. This part of the city is one of our main arteries. We don't need to create a concentration in such a vital part of the community. Again, I urge the council to reject this variance and to abide by the rules we have already established. There are plenty of opportunities around Mitchell to realize a business such as this. It does not need to be located somewhere that is too close to the other dispensaries and causes this much harm to the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Dwight Stadler, Ward 4. I want to ask a request. Rather than me jumping up and down half a dozen times to answer all these DLJ and Genesis requests, I'd like to just lump sum them into one, so I only have to come up one time and you hear the same story. Is that okay? Okay. Basically, I'm opposed to all their requests. And the reason for it is that they cite the same address in their variances as they do their license applications. If you approve the license application or the conditional use permit with that same address, then you're inherently approving the variance because of the location. And I appreciate the one gentleman's offer to reconsider a location. I think that's a good idea. The other reason is I think Doug Daly representing, Attorney Doug Daly representing his two clients put together a phenomenal letter explaining about the concentration of this type of business all in one concentrated area. And I don't think that's a good idea for Mitchell. I think it's really kind of the wrong thing to do. That's basically, well, the other thing was, and I stated this the last time, some of you weren't here, but the bottom line is you guys spent months on working out the ordinance for this thing and for the medical marijuana businesses. It probably was over a year for all that I remember. I think it was approved in 2020 or something like that. So you spent a considerable amount of time putting this stuff together, and now to go and change it or modify it with a variance request for distance requirements, might as well throw your ordinance out the window, because right out of the gate you're saying it was no good to start. The other piece of the puzzle, I just lost my train of thought, so I'll just conclude there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this?
I will briefly. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Doug Daly. I'm appearing on behalf of the Coomer Trust, who is the owner of the property located at 419 East Juniper Street, as well as here on behalf of Lee Electric, who's doing business as TK Electric. I appreciate Mr. Stadler's comments with regard to my letter, and I'll refer you all to that. I know if you've read it, and I know you've all heard me up here at least 3 times before, maybe 4. I kind of lost count. I would just ask on behalf of my clients that you follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission, deny the variance request, as it is our position that this variance application would go directly against the spirit of your ordinances. We've already gone through the process of amending the ordinance once to eliminate the right-of-ways. Had you wanted to be able to allow a medical cannabis dispensary within 1,000 feet of another that is already established, that should have been done with regard to the amendment to the ordinance. This goes directly against the spirit, which is to prevent the concentration of medical cannabis facilities in one area. And right now you've got the only ones that have been approved all along that main entrance into Mitchell. One's on the south side and 2 on the north side. We think that's directly in violation of the spirit. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, roll call, please.
Oh, before, can we make a couple comments?
Sure, go ahead.
I would like to, Stephanie, if you could bring up the list of neighbors. Okay. So basically, there's 9 there, and of course, we'll throw out Don's, which is the first one, so theoretically, 8 are given these letters to indicate if they wanted to approve the variance or not. And keep in mind, our ordinance is working perfect. We said that it didn't deny them the opening up or us approving it. It is they have to go through another layer, another step of going to the planning commission, which they did, and then we know the planning commission denied. But then what it is these people, theoretically, the neighbors, have the ability to say it's either a good fit or not a good fit. So of the 8 people that we have up here, the negative letters, how many people are on this with negative letters? Or to deny?
To deny, Coomer's Trust would be letter to deny. TK Electric now, which also be Lee Phillip or Philip
Yeah.
Lee. Sorry, I get them backwards. Went on with that one because
But that's the same address.
it's not the same. It's the same address, yes. It's just different ownerships with it because he bought the business from them, and Coomer's own the land still.
Correct.
Patzer's, the reason why there are 2 of them up there is because the building that they're proposing this location is a different address than Patzer Woodworking across the street. They have 2 different addresses for that. So by ordinance, I have to send one to each address that's listed.
Correct. Which would make sense because it's 2 different addresses and 2 different buildings.
And you also got a general overall consensus one from a lady that got put with every single cannabis application that you saw. That was outside of this. It was from the publication, and that's why we publish in the paper and notice it on the doors.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess my point is we hear variances all the time, and theoretically we do get 1Z or 2Z or whatever saying that no, I wish you would deny it. So theoretically, 1 out of 8 indicated to us that we should deny this. So my point is, as we go forward, whatever way you're going to vote is fine. But as far as I'm concerned, if you see one person on here we should have denied the last one that just came up in front of us. Because one individual, one property said, let's deny it. So that's the way I'm looking at it, and therefore I'm going to be voting in favor, or actually against the denial. I'd be interested in somebody else's comment to that.
Okay.
Well,
Discussion?
I'll speak to that. The first, the comment that we took months and months and maybe even years, it was last November that we started. We put that into place. At the time that we put it into place, no one spoke at all about 1,000 feet or 300 feet or anything else related to that. No one spoke against any of them until they found out where the locations were, and the people that did the applications didn't know where any of the other locations were. So nobody was trying to put something under the rug or get something closer than we allowed, etc. Mr. Coomer keeps bringing up the fact, and I brought it up, and it was almost, to me, a humorous comment when we talked about measuring door to door as easier than property line to property line when we had the right-of-way information in there. And the reason I brought that up was because we went for 2 months with the city people measuring and the planning commission measuring locations to other locations, and none of them had it correct. We approved the first cannabis location out in the strip mall by Walmart, and it was within 300 feet of a school. So it was closer than we allowed, and We voted for it, and nobody here that I see got up and said, oh, we can't do that. You're not following your ordinance. Nobody said that. And it wasn't until we pointed out that if you measure the right-of-way, all of these are closer than 1,000 feet. Every one of them. None of them could have worked. So the ordinance, to me, is evolving. And it should end up where we, in my opinion, where we can make it work for the business. Everybody is all worried. You say cannabis, and it's like, oh my God, they're all criminals or something. These are people just trying to get into a business opportunity that the state made available to them. And that's my view on it. We're within 133 feet or something or another out of 1,000. And the question of concentration, and I looked at this, if this is bad for concentration, then why didn't you object to only 1,000 feet when we did the ordinance last November? It should have been 5,000 feet. But then I went and looked at, so what is the concentration of other businesses in town? Plot out the pharmacies in town and tell me how many of them are north of First Avenue. Only 2 out of 6. And plot out the gas stations in town. 2/3 of them are from First Avenue to the south. So the businesses locate where people are, not where ordinances set people to go. So I just don't understand the super huge concern of any other business could move into next to TK Electric, and would they have all the same concerns? Any business that's approved in that zoning district could move in there. So I'm going to vote against the denial.
I'd like to comment. Doug Daly appearing again. I think that's a bit disingenuous, Councilman Rice, with regard to indicate that you're not protecting the public here with this. By comparing them to other businesses that can go right next to each other, you're not talking about the same kind of businesses. You yourself passed these ordinances and the requirements that protect the public, not just the neighboring property.
What am I protecting the public from?
From having a concentration of cannabis establishments. You actually, to minimize the statute or the ordinance that you passed, provides that the purpose is to minimize the negative effects that cannabis establishments have on adjacent land uses and to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of the city, and to prevent a concentration of certain cannabis establishments. You don't have those ordinances in places with regard to pharmacies or machine shops or garages or whatever the case may be. You all passed this to protect the community, not the business owners that are attempting to get into it.
That's your opinion.
I believe it is, and I believe that you stated that in your ordinance, so I don't believe that it's just my opinion. It's stated in black and white.
Well, then why wasn't anybody here opposing more than 1,000 feet when we passed the ordinance?
Because that's irrelevant to this discussion.
Why wasn't it? Why weren't they here? Because they didn't know the location. Right. Period.
But so the other side of the coin too is on this that I think you keep losing sight of is the fact that the applicant has to show that there's a hardship. There's no hardship that's been shown here. He didn't apply when there was the lottery. Had he applied when there was a lottery, he would have got in, and all the others would have had to get a variance. No, I don't believe that he did, Mr. Rice.
After the initial lottery.
So anyway,
Mr. Stadler, you have a
thank
comment?
you.
Dwight Stadler, Ward 4 again. Council Rice, I disagree with you. I was here when you were discussing the boundaries and the distances. And if you recall, my parting comments to that was, if you set the distance to be in another state and another county, I would be okay with that. So I was opposed to certain things. I'm not opposed to somebody conducting business. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the medical cannabis establishment. But if they're really medical cannabis, why aren't they next to a Vera Queen of Peace? Why aren't they next to a Vera on the grassland? If it's medical cannabis, wouldn't they want to be in close proximity to a medical facility? That makes sense to me. Concentrating marijuana places all on Burr Street makes no sense to me. I agree with Attorney Doug Daly and what he's saying. I agree that you're disingenuous in saying nobody was here. I was here. You just don't remember it.
Oh, yeah, I do. But did you object to 1,000 feet? You gave,
I'm not opposed to 1,000 feet.
A comment about another state or another county.
I'm not opposed to 1,000 feet. What we're addressing is a variance to that 1,000 feet, which is 867. And if the panel members have made a motion to deny this variance request to drop to 800, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Are you approving? Are you voting for the denial of this variance? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm voting against the denial.
Okay, well, that makes no sense because you're going less than 1,000 feet. I'm not saying to go more than 1,000 feet. I'm saying you're cutting under that 1,000 feet. Maybe I'm missing what you're trying to tell me, but my point is you put together this ordinance. And as Attorney Doug Daly pointed out, you didn't apply the same standards to pharmaceutical companies or mechanics organizations that you did to the medical cannabis or to cannabis institutions or of business. So you stand by what you put in black and white. And I agree variances can be done, but my point is you just put this into place and it's all in black and white with your certain restrictions, and now you're going to allow everybody to back down from it. Especially when it comes to a religious institution where I think Genesis is requesting 0 feet or 101 feet variance from a religious institution kitty corner across the street. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I think it's the wrong thing to do. I'm sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox. I'm going to get off. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I look at I know how it's. I know how it's measured from corner to corner, and I'm looking at the lines up there too. You know, I got a little problem with this because their front door and the way you drive is probably, I'm just totally guessing, 1,400 feet. I don't think they can see each other. And then the bad news is if they would have been, whatever, 6 hours earlier, it would have been the other one applying for the variance. That's what I got a problem with. And I know the other problem, that's on one side, and the other side I'm thinking of is I don't know how you can't treat all variances the same. And, but I'm looking here, they're going off the back corner to a huge lot of the old Campbell's store or Menard's store. And, you know, and they're going to the corner of the lot. Yes, that is less than 1,000, but, you know, I look where their front door is and it's a lot further. So I'm debating back and forth what's right. And, but I don't know how a guy can not on this something treat every variance the same. And that's why I'm going to be against it.
Hello, Nick Coomer again. As I stated previously, been here the last 3 or 4 of these conversations that we've had about this. None of these comments have been brought up to me at any time. So, yeah, I probably should have been here during that 5,000 foot, discussion. But now I'm finally getting some kind of response out of any of this conversation from Mr. Rice. I remember the conversation we had over the phone about door to door. That didn't sound like a joke to me in any time. And then also reviewing the previous city council meeting, that didn't sound like a joke to me at any time when you brought up door-to-door. It was very passionate, your discussion that we had. That
Yeah,
everyone had.
my point was that the ordinance can be changed, and we can change it at any time.
Yeah, exactly, that's why we
An
put it in place.
ordinance allows for a variance to be heard. That's what we're doing.
I understand. I
Okay.
get that. I get why that's used.
Thank you. I think it's time we put it to a vote since.
Well, can I make one more comment?
Very briefly.
Okay. I know we talked about as well, there's 9 other owners that put in for this letter as well, and we have 2 for Patzers. Sounds like that's the same vote to me. Same with DLJ, same vote to me. Yeah, we're the only ones that stepped forward during it because we're the ones adjacent to it and the ones directly impacted by it at this point in time. We did not get any other letters from anyone else, so why is that considered against us? 1 of 8? It's 1 to 2, maybe? Or 1 to 1, is how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we have a motion to deny. Again, in order for the motion to carry, it takes 6 votes, so roll call, please.
Sharps? Aye. Smith?
Nay.
Sabers?
Aye.
Rice?
Nay.
Dosher?
Nay.
McCardle?
Aye.
Barrington?
Nay.
Allen?
Aye.
4 to 4. Does not have the 6 to carry, so the motion to deny does not carry.
And he has until the end of the year, 12/31 of 2022, to bring a thing up.
So we're kind of getting into that murky area of, of Robert's Rules of Procedure.
Technically, to Robert,
So you need, right, so technically what you need is 6 votes to approve. To deny, it would be, I guess, a simple majority, even though you're not supposed to phrase motions in the negative. But, so really where we're at is you've got 4 votes against at this point. If, I assume, if it was a motion to approve, the votes come out the same, you're not going to have 6 votes to approve. So, I guess you can make of that what you will, but at this point, if it was a motion to approve and the votes were the same, that motion would not
So
have
remember this for the next 2. Okay. That way, if you oppose it, you don't vote aye, you vote nay, and it will fall. So, okay? That makes sense to everybody? I knew this was going to be a sticking point on this thing. Yeah.
So I'd just say for purposes of this one, the motion to, or I guess the approval fails due to lack of 6 votes in favor.
Let me point something out. It's a 4 to 4 tie. I am not part of the Board of Adjustment, so I do not carry a vote.
Correct.
Okay, so that is why you don't see me breaking a tie on this one. Just to make that clear. Motion doesn't carry. We go to the next one.
I would suggest that you do a motion to approve and re-vote, and that would make it then that the motion is not approved and it's denied at that point.
Yes, that's the clearest thing that you could do is a motion to approve.
Unless 2 people change their vote, then, but that's the cleanest way.
I think you're right.
Okay, I'll move to approve.
Okay, motion by Mr. Rice to approve.
The variance.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Okay, roll call again.
Sharps? No. Smith?
Now we're voting to approve it?
You're voting to approve it. Approve the variance.
No, because I'm voting against.
She does not want it approved. Yes.
Reversing everything.
Yes.
But the vote was to...
All right, our motion is to approve the variance.
Approve the variance.
Approve the variance.
Okay, aye.
Because the motion should be in a positive form, not a negative form. So an aye will approve it, a nay will not approve the variance. Aye? Okay.
Sabers?
Nay.
Rice?
Aye.
Dosher?
Aye.
McCardle?
No.
Barrington?
Aye.
Allen?
No.
Okay, 4-4 fails. Okay. Hearing an action on application for Genesis Farms LLC. Genesis Farms LLC has applied for conditional use permit to operate a medical cannabis dispensary located at 106 West 5th Avenue, legally describes lots 11 and 12, Block 12, Raleigh's First Edition, City of Mitchell. Said property is zone central business. And I'll point out that a conditional use is required in a central business for a dispensary. Mr. Jenigas.
Mayor and council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this. I believe it was 5-1 with one absent. If you bring up my report, my staff report, is that what it was? It's the one I didn't print. 5-1 with one absent. The question that gets brought up with it is, it's the chicken and the egg, the variance versus the conditional use. And this establishment is a conditional use application for central business. Yes, there's a variance that goes with it. It's which one do you go with first? We decided it's the business that comes to it first because a business could be approved in that business district. The variance would just go with the approval of that. So with that, I will leave it to Mr. Emmett for his comments.
Good evening. Emmett Rice-Stroffer, Chief Operating Officer for Genesis Farms. The company's based out of Box Elder. I'm based out of Sioux Falls. It's nice to see you all again. And first, I just want to say it is nice to see the room full of people. I realize there's a lot of people in Mitchell that love this city, and the decisions you make, you know, impacts them. And this is nice to see. In Sioux Falls, quite frankly, I'd like to see more of this. We get 3 minutes and a hard stop up here at the podium, and just nice to see citizens and their leaders engage each other. So as a businessman trying to operate a business here, you know, I think I've told you about my business in the past, so I'll skip that today. I want to talk just very specifically about the ordinance, and I'll try to be quick. I know there's already been a lot of discussion tonight. You know, I've heard some comments that we're rewriting things by doing a variance, and I don't agree with that. I just want to point out a couple things in the language. You know, the ordinance in your code 10-15-6 is regulations related to cannabis dispensaries. You know, it says that a cannabis dispensary shall be considered permitted in several districts, and then it says shall be considered a conditional use in the central business district. So that's where we're going, and that's why we need conditional use approval. I do believe when we were before you before, we did get the conditional use, just not the variance. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how I recall this, or it was scrapped, or, sorry, I was before the Planning Commission. They approved conditional use, but our recommended conditional use, but not the variance. So then the second part of the ordinance reads, we can't be within 300 feet of a school, church, child care center, nursery, etc., and cannot be within 1,000 feet of another dispensary. Such buffer distance requirements may be waived via the variance process so long as the zoning district for the proposed location would be allowed if the buffer were waived. Well, we are zoned correctly. We are going for central business. So the very next thing I go to then is the intent of that central business district in your zoning code. I think is very clear. It says the central business district, where I'm trying to get your approval, is intended to support a cohesive commercial center with a high priority on retail, personal service, institutional, governmental, and entertainment uses. Integrating new uses with existing businesses is encouraged. The historic district is with a portion of the district, therefore consideration of historic compatibility is encouraged. Outside storage is discouraged, and then there's a lengthy list of the types of businesses. I highlighted several that are green that I just show exactly how diverse the intention of that district is. And I'm very excited to bring a new type of business. As it relates to the concentration issue, that's why we went downtown. We wanted to be far away. I'm 1.6 miles away from the nearest other applicant. I believe that was the last one. About the same to you know, a little longer than some of the others. We're the only one north of Havens. We're the only one downtown. And since coming before you before and being in the news, I've had several Mitchell residents tell me that they want to come to my dispensary specifically because it's not out by the interstate. So I do believe it's good for that reason. And I share with the last applicant in that I have been searching high and low, And you didn't have a crystal ball when you wrote the ordinance, but I think you did a darn good job. And now, unfortunately, when you look at the map, even if there's chunks of green, within that, you've got existing businesses. Within the few that are available, we've got to work with landowners, landlords. Some buildings are not turnkey. That's why I chose this one. I can move in fairly quickly and get operating. I don't have to build from the ground up on a field of grass. So all in all, it was the best spot that I could find. I did also see in the ordinance, then I'll wrap up, the part about variances, which is allowed in addition to any other factor which may be considered in the grant or denial of a variance or conditional use permit, the following factors shall be relevant for variance and conditional use requests. And I only plan on speaking once on both the CUP and the variance, so I won't get up and repeat this. But 1, the proposed land use is consistent with the intent of this chapter and will not be contrary to public interest or injurious to nearby properties. The intent is in order to minimize the negative effects of cannabis establishments on adjacent uses and to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, the City Council adopts the following regulations. It says adoption of these regulations is not intended to unreasonably restrict the opportunity of cannabis establishments to locate in the city, but is for the purpose of preventing a concentration of certain establishments. So I think I'm as far away from the other ones as I can get, so I'm trying to prevent that concentration. I don't think there's any proof that we would be injurious. In fact, I've cited in the past, National Realtors Association has a study that has shown in several states where dispensaries open, crime actually goes down because we have so much on the line with our license. We tend to be the most proactive person on the block with reporting suspicious activity, and I will commit that to you. Between loitering, people consuming nearby, people being intoxicated, I'm going to report that and get rid of it as soon as I can. Otherwise, the state might take my license away. So we'll have good security, we'll have good staff training. There will be no injury to anybody nearby. We have a parking lot just south of here, which is just across the street from us, so there's plenty of parking. The second point is the proposed land use will not cause or contribute to the expansion of blight. You know, currently the building is very underutilized. There's a couple units open. I think there's a lot of potential. If we can become a tenant, the landlord is here tonight, and I've been talking to her. As long as we can get into business, we plan on helping with property improvements, whether that's new landscaping, artwork, a patio area. We want to make that a nicer corner. Starting with getting help with making the sidewalk more ADA friendly. Right in front of our store, there's a few uneven areas on the sidewalk. Third and last, and I'm just about done, that the applicable ordinances and regulations will be observed. So these are the 3 points that we need for a variance that I'm trying to address. 1, the intent. 2, that we will not cause expansion of blight. 3, that the regulations will be observed. Well, to date, my company has obtained more licenses than any other applicant in the state, and I continue to receive spectacular feedback from the state that my company, you know, is compliant. We have 0 issues. Of course, we're not operating yet, but my partners have been in liquor and gaming for many decades and have a 100% track record for compliance. So I believe we are a trusted business operator to make sure we follow all laws and rules. And I got to get a drink of water, so I'm pretty much done. You know, I had a few points in summary, but I think you get the point. You guys have tough decisions to make as community leaders. I understand that. No matter what, there's going to be folks from the community. This is brand new, and I have been through this before. I tend to find that once I open and come back before you for a renewal, it'll probably be crickets in the room because this is the first time. I understand there's concerns, but I really promise the public and the community there will not be safety issues. We will not create bad impacts on the community. We really want to be good neighbors. The only other last point was Sioux Falls. For what it's worth, this issue with churches and commercial areas was addressed in Sioux Falls. You don't have to take their lead, but I just wanted to share with you through the discussion on medical cannabis, they created a map and realized we have churches everywhere, in the Empire Mall, in the Western Mall, in downtown Sioux Falls. So they basically removed churches from sensitive use setbacks if they're in commercially zoned areas. So I just hope you'll think about that. This isn't the only community that has to figure out how do churches fit in commercial areas alongside other unique business types. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're addressing the conditional use. First, we're on number
First, then the
11?
variance. Yes.
Okay. I'll move approval of conditional use.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion.
Yeah, will you bring up the list again, please, of the neighbors? Okay, so there's 15 on here, and of course, Genesis will throw them out. Valesky owns the property. City of Mitchell probably is neutral because we're going to vote on that tonight. So theoretically, that leaves 12. Of these 12, these addresses, how many were negative or to deny?
You received 2 responses in favor and 2 responses against. One of the responses against was not from that group of lists.
Right. From that list, though, you've got one.
One from that list, yes.
Okay. And there again, like I said, this process is working perfect because what's happening is we're letting the neighbors know that there's going to be a variant, or in this case, a conditional use. And we have always in the past, and you can argue this, I guess, but this is the way we've always looked at it, is a silent vote is a vote of approval. So you don't have to mark it approve, but you do have to mark it disapprove or deny. So of the 12 individuals of these addresses here, we've had one neighbor that
You actually have 2. Just Weiser's and Reimnitz both submitted.
Reimnitz was a yes.
Why, he was positive, one was negative, 1 and 1. So you have one of each.
Right. So in other words, of the 12, we've got 1 to deny.
Right.
So 1 out of 12 has notified us to deny.
Correct.
And as far as I'm concerned, we live in a democracy, and it should be the majority of the votes should win. So therefore, that's why I'm going to be in favor of issuing the conditional use.
Do just the building owners get the, not the
tenant.
not the businesses?
No.
Because I had responses from businesses.
Yep. It goes to whoever owns the properties who gets
So
the
the
letter.
businesses beside it don't get a vote.
They get notice from the paper and the signage on the door, but no, I do not send letters to them. That is not part of our ordinance or part of codified law for that.
Okay.
What was the vote on the conditional use on the planning and zoning?
5-1 with 1 absent to approve the conditional use.
Thank you.
And when it was the first time before the ordinance got changed, it was 4-2 with 1 absent.
Okay, anybody in the audience want to speak? Come on up, Mr. Stadler. I thought you were only going to speak once.
Well, that was the intent. Dwight Stadler again, Ward 4. Can you bring back up that list of addresses that you had of the businesses? Okay, I'm going to go back to what I addressed at the last meeting, or at the citizens' input, as well as during the last meeting on this stuff. You're counting these notifications, and I believe, Mr. Smith, that you cited that if they're not received back, they're counted as an approval. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You have no objective evidence whatsoever that the owners ever received those notices, much less approved them. To count them as approval is wrong on any level, particularly for voting on this. So I think you're creating or manufacturing votes that don't exist. You count the ones that responded. And I don't care if for the, and you did, I don't know where he's at, is that you? You did an excellent job of selling his business. He really did. I liked his presentation, but I don't approve of the variance involved with it. And I know you're voting on the conditional use permit. He does have a variance request in there, by the way. But when you're looking at that list, You should only be considering those that actually voted. And I don't care if they all approve it or deny it, that's what you count, the ones that you actually received. The rest of them, they don't get a say because they never responded. You got to respond, and you got to have objective evidence that they responded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tara Valesky. I own the building, and I appreciate all the participation tonight, but you cannot miss it. It looks like a crime scene on that building because it's splattered all over the board as far as, you know, the ordinance and the variance or whatever. And a lot of people say, what is that orange stuff all over the, you know, splattered all over your door? Did somebody die or something? But no, it was probably in the paper too, or on the radio, whatever. So people do, if you pay attention to what's going on with the city, it was quite obvious that you have a chance to, you know, get up and speak, First Amendment rights, and I'm all for it. In fact, I told Linda McAfee, she rents for me to come to the meeting tonight, but, you know, I just think a lot of this variances, that's why we have a city council, common sense, because you guys grant many variances. In fact, you granted me a variance, thank you very much, a few years ago. Now I just paid my taxes today, and I'm kind of wishing maybe you would have denied it. But anyway, I appreciate everybody for participating and taking this, you know, taking this seriously. But I'm just telling you, I don't partake in marijuana. But I do know a lot of people, including veterans. If you go online, Mr. Stadler, Facebook page, there's Veterans for Medical Marijuana with PTSD and all kinds of other things that they go through. And I've gotten a lot of calls, too, and from veterans that are tired of being shamed or have to sneak around or have to drive to Flandreau to get their medication. And if you do go to a grocery store, you guys don't think of anything with a drugstore in, what do they have, Walgreens at, is it Walgreens or something? Lewis Drug at County Fair. Well, guess what? You can buy marijuana there. It's called Marinol. So they're already selling it. It's in a, you know, synthetic form, but, you know, people are not going to be outside smoking it or taking a gummy or whatever. It's a prescription. So I just don't, there's nothing to be afraid of, okay? If you want to be afraid, look at all the bars and the drunks walking downtown certain hours of when the bars close. That's what you should be a little nervous about. But we're going to have the best cameras on Main Street, so anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this?
Hi, Brenda Weiser. I'm a business owner at 114 West 5th.
Can you speak
Closer.
Sorry. I have to.
You have to because there's people watching online.
I know, that's what I don't want. I own a business at 114 West 5th, and I also own personal property at 120 West 5th and 500 North Raleigh. I'm asking you to deny the request for a variance for Regenesis Farm. It would be located too close to a religious institution, the Word of Life Church, and I do believe they did.
Let me ask you, so you want us to object to the variance?
Yes.
That's the next one.
I'm sorry.
Right now, we're on the conditional use, even though some of them kind of got...
Can I just stay up here and finish?
Sure, finish it up.
She also did object to the conditional use in the letter she sent.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Fire away. I just wanted you to understand that we're going to talk about the variance next.
Okay. It would be located too close to a religious institution, the Word of Life Church, and I do believe they did deny. They sent a letter to deny this, or they didn't want it approved either. There's also other churches very close by, especially First Lutheran Church, which also has a child learning center. They're open from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's going to be located in the same building as Big Friend, Little Friend, which doesn't send a very good message to kids of that organization. why is it even a good idea to have something like this so close to Main Street? Is that something that you want your families and tourists to see so close to the Corn Palace? My business has been there for 30-plus years. I have a family-based clientele, and it isn't the kind of atmosphere that I choose to have right next door. Also, the fact I already have an issue with people parking right directly in front of my business. Even with a parking lot right across the street, they still manage to park right in front. I have some clients that have a hard time getting in to my business, and so therefore that's an issue. You have boundaries and guidelines set in place for a reason, and I ask that you just maintain them. I know not everyone sent back their petitions to approve or disapprove or deny, and that's because part of the reason is, you know, Tara's the landlord, and so they didn't want to publicly speak out. I have no problem with Genesis having a business. I just prefer that they don't have it next door to mine, and I'm asking you to do the right thing and deny this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments on the conditional use? Okay, roll call vote. The motion is to approve.
I got
the
one
conditional
question.
use. Okay.
Justin, just so I understand what I'm voting for, the difference between 11 and 12, I understand that.
Yeah, so 11 is the conditional use permit and 12 is the variance. So I guess you can look at the conditional use permit as kind of a more global view of the whole operation, whereas the variance is specifically the buffer zone issue between this location and the church.
And that-
Justin, he can take this approval, if it's approved, and go anywhere downtown area?
So he'd have to come back and try to transfer the license if it was for a different conditional use, but he'd also have to go through the conditional use process again for whatever the new location would be too.
So
The conditional use permit is not transferable.
It is tied to the location.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, roll call, please.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Sharks. No. Smith.
Aye.
Okay, 7-1, motion carries. Conditional use is approved. Hearing an action on application for Genesis Farms LLC. Genesis Farms LLC has applied for a variance of 101 feet versus 300 feet is required to be from a religious institution located at 106 West 5th Avenue, legally described as lots 11 and 12, block 12, Raleigh's first edition, City of Mitchell. Said property is zoned central business. Mr. Jenigas.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended denial of this 6-0 with one absent. Concerns from neighbors were too close to the church. Big friend, little friend is right there. You've heard the objections and pros and cons from previous testimony. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. There were 2 responses for and 1 opposed from the letters that were sent out.
How come the measurement, can you drop that, drop it down one later. The measurement goes from the corner of not his lot of his business.
Because our ordinance states property line to property line, closest property line to property line. And he is a suite within that property line.
So they pick the closest point. But it's property line, which is what the ordinance says.
So there is not a letter from the church that was included, but the church did come to the planning commission?
Yes, Nathan Weber came to the Planning Commission and spoke opposed to it and voiced his opposition of it.
And Bill Parks also came.
Wasn't he here? Ms. Parks?
Bill Parks came here.
Yeah.
And,
The last one.
yep, and Bill was also at the meeting when we first discussed the ordinance.
So as far as we know, that is the church's stance right now is they are still
Opposed, yes.
Well, we're going to follow the rule that I've set all life for myself. I'm going to vote against it because of that. You know, I'm sure you had a chance to talk to the church, but maybe you didn't. But our ordinance is as such that it is 300 feet, and once they've made their decisions, as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm going to follow.
Okay, if you're going to make a motion, make it in a positive manner, please. And then if you oppose it.
Can I just do one quick comment?
Yes, you
I already made my points, just a couple little details to add. One, we will not be open on Sundays. Two, I know we think about visibility, and, you know, I know there's a lot of, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Parks. I went to the church, spoke to him for almost an hour. I love what he's doing over there. Whether we are there or 3 blocks away or up on Burr, your kids are going to see it, and you're going to have the conversation with them. And we got to work on that as a community. I don't think if I'm across the street or around the corner changes our responsibility as a community to look out for those kids. That's my view. I mean, Genesis, the name of our company comes from the book of Genesis. Our founders are all Christian. We value that, and it pains me that we're on opposite sides of the table right now with the church, but I believe we'll be good neighbors, and you know, maybe I can contribute to some of those programs in the future. That was it. Thank you.
One
Yes.
quick question. You live in Sioux Falls?
That's right.
And you said Sioux Falls City Council actually threw out all churches or just in the central business?
Just in commercial districts.
In the commercial districts.
Yep.
They say, given the fact there are so many churches.
They forfeited those sensitive protections. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Justin, quick question. Obviously, the difference from alcohol to medical marijuana that we're looking at. Do we have anything in our laws at all when we open up a establishment or a bar that serves alcohol or a restaurant that serves alcohol in accordance to the distance from a church?
No, we don't have any buffer zones for alcohol establishments, whether they're bars or off sale, whatever they might be. There aren't any buffer zones for those.
And more of that was brought up by a few people that got a hold of me and just asked the difference, obviously. I mean, we all know there's a difference, don't take me wrong, and just the fact they're saying the point that why are we able to have a bar or a selling of alcohol exactly next to a church, or obviously in this case, we got the back 40, we got the scoreboard. I don't need to keep on naming them all down Main Street. The difference of what we have at hand here is a question that got brought up, and I wanted to make sure I asked it to the public and to the council, of course, for consideration. So
There's a good chance they were all grandfathered in and the church came later, too.
that's possible.
Well,
you could open one up, you could open one tomorrow if you wanted.
Yes.
And Marty, the part of the irony is later on tonight, we're going to approve a whole bunch of special alcohol permits for the Masonic Temple, which is 70 feet away from the church.
Actually closer, yeah.
Even more ironic is one of the bars is now a church.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and if your point, Marty, is obviously we're dealing with what's in hand right here and the ordinance that we approve, I would not have a problem in the future if anybody wants to have the discussion of should we be including churches in a commercial area like Sioux Falls. I'd be willing to at least have that conversation and people can come in and give us their opinions.
No, we do not have a motion. Make it in a positive manner, please.
I will make motion to approve the variance.
Motion by Mr. Rice.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion. Anybody else wish to come up and talk about this? Okay. Motion for approval. Roll call, please.
Dosher.
Aye.
McCardle.
No.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
No.
Sharks. No. Smith.
No.
Sabers.
No.
Rice.
Aye.
5-3 opposed, so it fails. Hearing in action on application for Merrick. Robert D. Coomer of Infrastructure Design Group, representing Corey Merrick, has applied for variance for a minimum yard setback of 9 feet versus 25 feet for an existing dwelling located at 710 North Kittredge Street. Will be legally described as lots A and block 2 of Robert Wilkinson's addition, a vacation and replat of lot 5 and lot 6 of Robert Wilkinson's addition to the city of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is currently legally described as lots 5 and 6, block 2, and south half of vacated 8th Avenue, north half of vacated alley abutting Robert Wilkinson's addition to the city of Mitchell, Davis County. Said property is zoned R4. Mr. Janigas.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. We did receive 1 letter back in favor of it. Stephanie, will you please bring up the GIS?
I'm trying. I just lost my internet.
Sure. So this used to be 3 lots. There's 2 houses sitting on 3 lots. What they're doing is they're replatting the 3 lots into 2 lots. So you'll see the plat further in the agenda. By doing that, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I'm on Mrs. Merrick. It's still 4-0 with 3 absent. So that one, there's a house on the north side of that lot. The street has been vacated, so they get the south half of that. The alley, they get the north half of that because that has also been vacated. The existing house is already there. It was supposed to be a Kittredge address, but now they're, or excuse me, an 8th Avenue address, so now they're using Kittredge as their frontage, so that's where your front yard setback comes in.
It's not far enough, basically.
Right, it's supposed to be 25 feet and it doesn't meet that. They're not adding on to the property at all, any additions onto the house.
Did this come up because it got sold or replatted or?
Because it's getting replatted, it changes the legal of it, which changes.
So the legal description changed?
The legal will be changing if you approve the plat later. Yep. And there used to be an existing garage on the south part of that lot that has been already demolished. So that's why GIS shows it, it's there, but it's not actually there. That's gone already. Their intent is on the second lot that they're creating to bring in another house and a garage. And that will meet setbacks for everything, so there's no variances on the second lot.
So the second lot, they'll move the house far enough away from Kittredge address that it will?
Yep, it'll meet all setbacks.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Savers. Okay, further discussion? Can you bring it back up online?
I'm trying. We have no idea. Just give me a second.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, anybody wish to speak to this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing into action on application for Larry Weiser. Robert D. Coomer of Infrastructure Design Group, representing Larry Weiser, has applied for a variance permit for the following. Lot A, minimum yard setback of 19 feet versus 25 feet. Lot B, minimum front yard setback of 19 feet versus 25 feet for an existing dwelling. Minimum side yard corner setback of 12.2 feet versus 20 feet for an existing dwelling. Minimum lot width of 67.06 feet versus 70 feet. Minimum lot area of 9,580 square feet versus 10,000 square feet. Located at 1510 and 1520 East First Avenue, will be legally described as lots A and B in Block 10 of St. Green's addition. A replat of lots 10, 11, and 12 in Block 10 of St. Green's addition to the city of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is currently described as lots 10, 11, and 12, Block 10 of St. Green addition, city of Mitchell, Davis County, property zoned R2. Janigas.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval 4-0 with 3 absent. We received 2 letters back in favor of it. So there's 3 lots for the 2 houses that are there. They're splitting the 2 houses into 2 separate lots. Now, by doing that, it's created a new legal for both of the residences there, and the setbacks aren't met. They're not adding on to either of the properties, but it's just the jogging lines around to try and meet as many setbacks as they can. The jog in between them, they actually moved over 5 feet so that there wasn't a variance required for the garage in the rear of Lot B. The front setbacks, that's actually the old Highway 16, so it's actually...
First Avenue address?
Yep, so it's actually an 80-foot right-of-way is what's supposed to be right there, and so that's why they lost quite a bit of feet up front.
And why did this one come up?
I believe they're gonna be selling the properties, one or both of the properties, yep. And with the new title work, new legals, Cleaning it all up.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 4/18/22. Amy Holtz has applied for a conditional use permit to operate a family residential daycare located at 7080 2nd, legally described as Lot 9, Block 16, FM Green Addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County. Property zoned R2.
Set the date.
Motion by Mrs. Starks, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 4/18/22. Jasmine Lang has applied for a conditional use permit to operate a family residential daycare located at 717 West Ash, legally described as Lot 12, Block 10, Railroad Addition, City of Mitchell, Davidson County. Property zoned R2.
Set the date.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by
Barrington.
Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 4/18/22. Mike Hauser has applied for a variance for a combination of attached and detached accessory buildings of 3,270 square feet versus 2,000 square feet, and height variance 24 feet versus 22 feet for a new accessory building located at 2021 West 23rd, legally described as Lot A, Mason's Addition, northeast quarter, Section 17, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, Davidson County, South Dakota. Said property zoned R4.
Move to set the date.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. Allen.
And I question Stephanie, I just want to make sure. So the city doesn't have Easter Monday off as a holiday?
Correct.
April 18th is a meeting date? Okay.
And just out of curiosity, can you clarify where this is? Oh, I see, Elevator Road. So
Yep.
this is further west of...
Correct.
So it's
Northwest of
outside.
Northwest of Twin City.
Okay, that's what I
Just
wanted.
west of Twin City.
Oh, west on South Side
Yep.
of the Road.
South
So
side of
it's
the-
not in city limits, it's within the 3-mile radius?
Within the ETJ, the 1 mile.
1 mile.
Yep. Okay. Okay, we have a motion to second. Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 4/18/22. Mitchell Prehistoric Indian Village has applied for variance for a minimum front yard setback for a historic site building of 22 feet versus 30 feet located at 3200 Indian Village Road, legally described as Prehistoric Indian Village site in the northeast quarter of Section 9, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, Davidson County, South Dakota. Real property is Zone PL, public lands.
Set the date.
Motion by Mr. McCardle, second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene. Entertain a motion for Board of Adjustment to adjourn City Council reconvene regular session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. All right. Hearings and actions to approve the following medical cannabis dispensary applications. DLJ LLC received on 11/16/2021, 5:02 p.m. I think he's
So move to
requested
table? Is that
table.
what you're asking for?
Yeah, I don't mean to speak for Don, but I think based off our prior conversations, what he's asking for you to do is table this until he's able to come back with an alternative location, allow him to amend his application and bring that back.
So move to table.
The timeline for how much time you want to give him, that I think would be up to the council to decide, but I think that's what he's asking.
And I'll add to that motion that we would go through the year and
Okay.
reevaluate at the end of December.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Did you want to say anything, Mr. Lyons? Okay. Anybody address it? Anybody out in the audience want to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Genesis Farms LLC received on 11/18/2021, 4:22 p.m.
I don't know if Emmett is still here, or if
He wants to do the same thing.
I was just going to say, he's spoken to me before about wanting to do the same thing, so I'm guessing he was going to ask you for the same.
Move to table through the end of the calendar year.
Okay. Who seconded that? Mr. Barrington? Okay, motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington to table through the end of the year. Discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing and action on medical cannabis cultivation application of BWC Mitchell LLC at 1400 South Burr.
All right, well, I'll give a brief overview on this one. This will be the first cultivation application that the city's received. You're familiar with the applicant, or at least the affiliate company. This would be the former Runnings Building at 1400 South Burr. They previously were given the preliminary approval for the dispensary under the name of a different LLC. So this would be a new company specifically for the cultivation. Staff reviewed all of the plans provided for that portion of the building and the cultivation procedures. Nothing real major to note there. I know that the applicants themselves were not able to be here tonight, but a representative is here if the council has any questions. And I think I'll open it up to council or the representative or to the public, whoever wants to come speak on that.
So my understanding is that they don't require any conditional use permit because it is highway business district. Is that correct?
Correct. So for cultivation, the only place a conditional use permit would be required is in Central Business District. So the 1400 South Burr location is highway business, and cultivation would be a permitted use there. Obviously, they still need to be granted the license, so that's what's in front of you tonight, but it does not need to go through the conditional use process.
And this would be contingent on building permit or any changes that they would need to make, that all that is approved?
Correct. So just like I've recommended for all of the other licenses we've approved so far, I'd recommend that any initial approval that we grant here tonight be conditioned on them completing the full building permit process and passing a fire inspection before they go into operation.
Do we have any clue as to how long before they start operation?
Maybe the representative that's here tonight can speak to that question. I know that they'll still need to make it through all the state process, and I couldn't tell you how long that might take. So I can't tell you how long it might be. I think once they start, it takes them several months to start growing the plants and all of that before they'd have any product to sell to a dispensary. But how long it's going to take them to get from now to being able to start growing, I couldn't tell you.
So I know that one of the big concerns that has been expressed is the smell. And so I know that they're, in all of the plans, they have an odor mitigation solution. But that said, what if we get into it and find that that mitigation is not effective?
Yeah, so I guess if we get to that point, we would probably have to look at our revocation procedures to see if something needs to be done on that end. I think they have plans in place to try to address those, but ultimately we don't know how effective those are going to be at this time, and you really don't until it's actually happening. So I don't think that that's something that you can 100% address ahead of time.
Justin, didn't a bunch of you guys go visit the plant for Andrew?
Yeah, there were a number of staff members that,
smell things there.
Yeah, you could smell it at the Flandreau facility. I will say that at that location, they had no odor mitigation whatsoever, so I don't think it's a real fair comparison. Gotcha. So yeah, at the Flandreau facility, there was no odor mitigation at all. So you definitely could smell an odor, but my understanding.
Does the state set the guidelines as far as what they all have to have, as far as ventilation and?
I don't know how much the state regulates that part of it. I think the state's primary concern is more about how it's grown and how it's tracked.
So Justin, there would be a recourse that if that does start smelling like marijuana for half a mile away, what could we actually do?
Yeah, so our ordinance does have the odor control as a requirement, and if they're not meeting the ordinance the way that they're supposed to, you've always got the option to initiate those revocation procedures.
We got an option to shut them down.
You do.
Justin, do we have a clue as to how much of the square footage of that building they're going to use?
I don't think I could tell you off the top of my head. It's a large majority of the building that would be used for cultivation, and they even have a part marked in there for future manufacturing and processing. They know that they'll have to come back for that license at a future date, but I think basically everything that's not being used for the dispensary will probably be used for the cultivation, at least some part of that process.
Has ownership of the building been addressed and satisfied?
Yeah, so there was some, I guess, concern initially when we received the application about the ownership of the site. So they've been working with a third party to try to have them actually purchase the building, and then they would lease back the portion that they intend to use. It doesn't sound like they're going to be able to do that fast enough, so what's actually going to happen is BWD, which is the dispensary, will continue through their purchase process. They'll own the property in its entirety, and then they'll be leasing the portion BWC that will be used for the cultivation. And then in the future, if they're able to work out that deal with the other company, they'll bring back some amendments to their licenses to address how the ownership of the site would be changed. But at this point, the ownership, everything seems to be correct.
Is there anybody here from them to speak for this?
I was told that there was going to be a representative here.
Yep, here we go.
There he is.
Good evening, everyone. Skylar Mickelson, attorney at Morgan Biehler, and I've been working with this group primarily on the real estate acquisition side, and so in the time it took me to get from my chair to here, I could have exhausted my permitting and licensing, but I think I could answer some of these questions we've covered. And then the first one that comes to mind was just how much space it takes up. They had a rough diagram submitted as part of their lease that we tried to put in place in front of the city, because as Justin was getting into, there's several entities involved here, all related, but hence the difference between BWD for something or another dispensary and BWC being cultivation. And so they have a graphic, I don't know how accurate it is, or if you guys have had a chance to look at it, that shows how much space they plan on occupying, but all of that should be traceable to a paper trail showing the relationship between the parties, how much space they plan to occupy. And then Justin's recital of ownership and where we're at was accurate. We've got an agreement in place. We plan to close, I think we just kicked it out 2 more weeks, and I think an approval of this cultivation will really accelerate that as well. We did originally try and get a third party in to buy it that we would lease from. but a landlord has concerns that we're able to do the business in there. And so that fell through. And so it's the plan of BWC to purchase this building from Runnings. If we go with that third party in the future, that'll be something we address when we get there, but for now, it's the plans of BWC to purchase this building.
So where are you at with the state approvals? A ways away?
It's my understanding, and this is nothing I would want to sign off on, but that is all a natural follow of the municipal. So in other words, it starts at the municipal side of things, and that the state has been, let's say just 90 days after they see that you're approved at the municipal level, that their approval process will follow after. So try and knock this out first, and it sounds like the state will follow, barring any unplanned items.
So I'll follow up on that, Jeff. So usually I guess the way that the state is processing these is they won't even start reviewing an application until they've received a certification from the city that the applicant has complied with our ordinances. At this point, we've only issued one of those certificates, and that was for the location down by Walmart. So once we get to that point, we'll issue the certificates to the state for any of the other applications that are approved. And then I don't know how long the state takes to process things on their end.
We've been told to believe that the state will take their time, and that time, at least historically based on other jurisdictions, is 90 days.
It's not too long. Just curious, have you got an idea of the number of employees?
Of the what?
Number of employees?
I do not.
Just curious.
This is all information I could get and readily transfer to Justin, but I don't have it tonight.
I'll move approval of this application for cultivation pending building permit and fire inspection.
Motion by Mr. Rice.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCarty. Okay, further discussion? Anybody else in the audience wish to address this? Roll call, please.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen. Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. 22, now I'm going to combine all these in the interest of time and only read the dates. So if you're speaking to one or another, please reference the date and which line it is. And if you're going to speak to them in the audience, please let us know the date so we know which one you're talking about. They all happen to be the same entity. That's why I'm doing it combined, okay? Hearings and actions on the following alcohol licenses. On the application of Corn Palace Shrine Club for a special event liquor license located at Masonic Hall for April 9th, 2022 for a cornhole tournament, May 7th, 2022 for a wedding dance, June 4th, 2022 for a wedding dance, June 11th, 2022 for a Shrine Club open house, July 29th, 2022 for a Lakeview golf banquet, August 6th, 2022 for a 2002 class reunion, September 10th and 11th, 2022 for a wedding dance, September 23rd, 24th for a wedding dance, and October 1st and 2nd for a wedding dance.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Sabers.
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Mr. Coster, you don't have any issues with any of these, do you?
Mayor and Council, we have no objection to any of these applications.
Does the Masonic Temple pay a fee for each one of those licenses?
Yes, they do.
They pass it on.
What was the question?
The Masonic Temple, they pay a fee for each one of these?
Yes.
What is the fee for $200?
$200 for each one.
Out. Kind of makes you feel like you're making some money tonight, doesn't it? Anybody in the audience wish to address any of these? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Here we go. Action to award bid for wastewater treatment facility, our wastewater treatment facility Headworks improvements, project 2021-31. Mr. Schrader, it's your show from here on out, I think.
Here we go. Mr. Mayor, Council, Bids were open on March 22nd in City Hall Council Chambers at 1:30 p.m. 4 bids were received, the lowest being from PKG Contracting, an amount of $15,796,900. 2 other bidders were within or under 1% of that bid, so they were very competitive. The bid tabulation is attached for your information. Gabe Lauber, engineer with HDR, provided a letter summarizing the bids and a recommendation to award. The letter states that all indications are that in the current market, costs will only increase as we move forward. HDR and PKG have been discussing value engineering options to reduce the project cost. There are some viable options to consider, which will more than likely be done as a change order at the time of award if approved. The city's current rate structure is set up for a $10 million project. All project costs included, the project is $18.8 million roughly. We are proposing to raise the sanitary sewer, the unit rate, by 63 cents to cover the additional costs of the project. This isn't exactly how it has to be paid for. We could do a combination of base rate along with the unit rate increase, but historically, recently, we have been increasing rates quite a bit by the base rate, so we think it's a good time for a unit rate increase. There's also the possibility to obtain grant dollars through the ARPA, NDA, and RSRF programs. Staff is recommending awarding the project to PKG Contracting at the amount previously discussed. The bid shall be contingent on DNR approval and acquiring additional funds. I know in December we had talked about this route of receiving all of our ARPA funds, which came out to a total projects of roughly $46 million to get $15 million in grant. So what Stephanie and I had talked about, we'd like to bring a work session to council sometime soon, basically to update the cost of the project with this increase and kind of how that looks and see if we need to cut some projects that we have planned and how our rate structure will fit. When we brought that in December, we did not include any of the proposed ARPA grant funds just because we weren't 100% for sure how they were going to be laid out. Now we have a better picture of that and we could update you at a later date. With that, I'll open up to any questions.
Joe, the usage rate increase to 63 cents, what is it now?
Right now our base rate is, or our unit rate is $3.11.
So you go to 3.74.
Yep. Our base rate right now for sewer is $20.01. Correct.
So what's that on an average home, Joe?
So a 5,000 gallon user, I believe it's a $4 increase roughly.
Per month?
Per month.
Stephanie, do you have?
Yeah, I'm good there, sorry.
While she's looking for that, can you give us some idea of what some of these value-added things
certainly.
could potentially be?
So we originally were looking at a mason construction building, and there was some cost savings in doing precast panels, which is, it's just typical one way or the other. Timing was a lot of the savings there. Changing the type of piers for the foundation, they own their own piece of equipment, that makes it cheaper for them. And then we are doing an equalization basin for additional storage out there so we don't have to discharge to the creek. And that is looking at doing a cast in place versus pre-stressed concrete panels.
So I'm always curious why that wasn't the original plan. I mean, it's not like we're making any sacrifices for this. These are still same quality, same life expectancy, same.
Yep. So these are typical kind of one way or the other, and you try to judge that in the market, you know, a year out in advance as you're doing design. And it just turns out for this contractor, timing-wise, he's able to do some of those projects himself, or some of that work himself, versus he'd have to sub out to another company that then dictates his schedule that way. So those all the way into the decision. Yep.
I think typically you find masonry work is a little bit cheaper than precast. Happens to go the other way on this one, just by the nature of things.
Yep. Precast is a lot faster to put up.
Yes.
Yep.
Steve asked that I pull this sheet up, which is basically our historical rate increases since 1993. Sewer rates would be in the right half after the solid line here. You can see that since 2019 is when we started doing our major surcharge projects or major projects, and we went from $5 to $10.75 on the base, up to $13.30, up to $20.01. So if you look at those increases over the past 3 years, that's what Joe was referring to when he said the majority of those increases have went on the base rate. Everybody is paying that rate the same, whether they use very little a month or they're the highest user on the system. The only increase that has happened since 2015 was going from 2.94 to 3.11. So that's why we think it's due for to look at a rate increase on the usage versus the base this time. And like Joe had mentioned, we talked about a work session. We could even do that before the next council meeting if that will work for council. Our intention is still to stay within that total proposed rate increase to fund the $46 million. It's just you'll maybe have to back some projects out or push them off a little farther if we don't want to. We don't want to get to a point where we can't. The people who are paying the rates can't afford to do everything that we have as well.
And we would, and if this bid is awarded, we'd look to move on the rate increase rather quickly so we can get the loan in line, because PKG wants to get started, I believe, in May.
And then I guess just one other clarification, when we showed that project list in December, this was not included on that list because it was one that was already approved.
Correct.
So that's why you might have to back off on some of the other $46 million that you reviewed. 46 million, is that right?
46 million. 46 million is the magic number to get all of our ARPA grant.
Joe, you, in an email back and forth, I think we have 2.1 million of ARPA grant possible on this, and if that does come in, this 63 cents goes down to 43 cents?
Yep, so 2.1 is the current projected, what we've been told by DA&R. That won't be finalized until their meeting in later this April.
This month?
Yeah, yep. And then along with the valued engineering, it is reduced to 43 cents.
And then I think after this rate increase, because this project was already farther along than the recent applications we put in, after this rate increase is established, council can do another graduated step increase like you did previously where we set them aside. I think we had 3 different dates that we were implementing increases to fund the SRF apps that we had out there. And I think you spread them 6 months apart last time.
Might have been shorter than that, 3 months each.
But you could take time to review to make sure you're comfortable with those increases and those timelines in the future.
And how much money is this going to raise? The difference between the 10 whatever and
so, yep,
not the total 18, but...
Correct, it's the difference. So it'd be the 8.8 is the 63 cents. Yep.
I guess one last comment, sorry, Joe.
Oh.
Obviously, with this project that was already in status, we were already going through this project before we put the other applications in. That also puts us as this one as a higher priority for the other ones that we had discussed with council as well.
And how soon do you think we would do rate increase? Have a meeting before the end of May and a rate increase before July 1st? Or?
I think we would need to bring what that proposal would be to that next April meeting. We could do it at a work session before your regular council meeting. And then we could either do the resolution at that meeting or at the first meeting in May. Yeah, and then you could have that collection. We have to have the rate passed before you can finalize.
You can do the loan.
Yeah.
And there'll be another public hearing, and there's some other items that SRF will have us publish in the paper and those types of things.
He could start.
Any comment about the bids all coming in within $100,000?
That's insane on this high of a number. That you never see that. That's crazy.
These are good bids.
Yeah.
They're just unfortunately high. But in reality, everything's coming in way
And
low.
our estimate of 10 million was from 2020.
Right.
So I mean, we knew it was going to come in high. It was just how much.
So we need to award the bid, right?
Let-
Award the bids to PKG.
Motion by Mr. Allen. Second. Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Come on up, Reed.
How's it going, fellas? Reed Bender. So as far as the wastewater facility, getting this thing done, I think is a really good idea. You mentioned just being able to discharging when the lagoons are filling up. When it does rain heavy, there's an overflow and it does dump directly into the creek instead of the river. So I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done in this town. And if I can address a couple other things quick while I'm up here, so I don't have to come back. Just
You got to ask the mayor.
the mayor, can I? Just while it's on my mind, I was thinking about the lake and how I personally would like to see that lake cleaned up. Actually use that $380,000 that you put on a study to get that done. I'd be pleasantly surprised to see you get that done. I know we need a west end to get that done first so that we can filter that out, but I'd also like to see you put some of them ordinances in place and actually follow them to maybe prevent some of that flow from coming into the lake, put in some retention ponds, things like that, manufactured wetlands and stuff like that.
That'll
Yep.
happen this summer.
And I can see that, we can picture the lake in a nice clean lake where my grandkids might be able to swim someday, right? That would be nice, but what I can't see is spending $40 million on this place. I don't think that would promote growth in town like a lake might, but one thing that would promote growth, I think, would be an arena built probably 10 years ago. But since hindsight doesn't work like that, maybe we should consider building something like that, because I think that would actually promote growth in this town. And if we do want to grow, which maybe we don't, I don't particularly want to see us grow too much, bring all the riffraff in, all the weed heads maybe. Anyway, but if we do want to grow, that wastewater facility is important. One of the big things that we got to worry about in the future, though, is water, because water is going to become a problem. BY Water on peak hours in this area, they do have trouble keeping up on that. Now, we do have some grow facilities coming in that do use a lot of water, and we also have the soybean plant coming in, so water is going to be an issue at some point. And just because I think it would be cool, the water treatment facility that isn't in use, it'd be just kind of cool to maybe get some green grants, since our government likes to pump out money like crazy, and fix that place up and get it ready for maybe even some solar or wind power, some Tesla batteries, so we can get that off the grid and maybe even have that as a water source if we need it, just in case old Biden does get us into World War III and, the whole cyber attacks or whatever, we'd have the ability to get our own water, because that is essential to life, I guess. And as far as the weed stuff is concerned, what a bumbled up mess everything is. When you make ordinances, you should stand by them. I don't think we should have them kitty corner from a place where kids hang out and stuff like that. That's the only drawback. Other than that, I don't really care. But myself, when I want some weed, I just call my dealer, right? So anyway, thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Reed. Okay, anybody else wish to address this one? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to award bid for rock chips, project 2022-10. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, bids were open on March 23rd in City Hall Council Chambers. One bid was received by Spencer Corey's, unit price rate of $13.80 for a total bid of $34,500. That is the same price as last year. It is under budget, and I recommend approval to Spencer Corey's.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody nice wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to award bid for petroleum products. Project 2022-13. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, bids were also open for this on March 23rd at 1:30 p.m. at City Hall Council Chambers. One bid was received by Jebro Inc. Tack oil or the emulsion was $776.62 per ton. Total cost of $232,986. Our fog seal came in at $532.87 per ton for a total cost of $53,287. This project did come in over budget. The plan is we had plans to mill and overlay South Harmon. We are going to move that to a chip seal. We figure we can get another 7 years on that road easily if we chip seal. That's a savings of $215,000, which we'll put towards our chip seal project and any other work that needs it. So we are recommending approval to Jebro.
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Savers.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Church. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve request for FAA approval of transfer of entitlement funds. Mr. Schrader.
This agenda request is for approval of the mayor and city attorney to sign the FAA agreement for transfer of entitlements. We currently have $65,000 budgeted. The project came in at $46,000. So we're asking you to approve the agreement with FAA, which authorizes the mayor and city attorney to sign.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement A 2022-11, 9th and 5th reconstruction project for engineering support staking project 2021-7 with McLaury Engineering. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this agreement is with McLaury Engineering for design and staking services for the 9th and 5th project. Staff recommends that City Council approve the agreement for $43,000 to McLaury Engineering.
Is that within budget?
So the project came in over budget, and in the supplemental appropriations, I believe we're asking for $500,000 to assist with this project.
And the first reading of that is your second to last item on the agenda.
Okay, very good. Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement A 2022-12, 9th, 5th reconstruction project for inspection project with Bros Engineering.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this agreement is with Bros Engineering to perform construction observation services. They'll do the day-to-day, the soil testing, those types of items. We recommend that you approve the agreement with Bros Engineering, an amount of $226,500.
Will they have a staff on board every day on this?
Yes, sir.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement A 2022-13, financial agreement for airport rescue grant 346-037-031-2022 with SDDOT. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this agreement is with the state of South Dakota to receive ARPA funds in the amount of $59,000, and staff recommends approval. Authorize the mayor to sign.
Motion by Mr. McCardle. Second. Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement 8 2022-14 James Valley Drug Task Force Joint Powers Agreement. This is one of those that gets renewed every year. Mr. Coster, you want to speak to it?
Mayor and Council, Chief Coster of the Police Department, as the mayor said, this is an agreement that we've had for a number of years. It's just on an annual that we have to bring before you for approval.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. McArdle, second by Mr. Berry. Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen. Okay. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve resolution R 2022-10, creating TID number 27 and approving the project plan. Mr. Jenigan.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval 4-0 with 3 absent. I will turn it over to Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Peterson has been kind of pacing back there, so I'll let him talk like he likes to. So I'll let them take the heavy.
And I'll try to keep my comments brief here, too. Staff did the initial review after receiving the application for the tax increment financing. We worked through the initial version of the application, the initial version of the project plan, worked cooperatively on coming up with a project plan, which is what you see before you. It's a small residential, or I shouldn't say small, it's a number of units off of Fiala Road in the, what's the name of the loop again? Wood Circle. There are a couple of lots out there that are already existing that are included in the TIF district. There are 2 lots that are excluded. You recently, or are approving, I don't remember where we're at with it, approving a plat for the rest of the lots that are depicted in the project plan as unplatted or for future. I think the intent, and that's stated in the project plan, is for this to be used for affordable housing, which means the homes are going to be valued at $300,000 or less. And I think at this point I'll probably turn it over to Don to let him go through any of the information he wants to put in front of council.
Don Peterson, the attorney for the contractor. He's here. Paul Gronewig with Gronewig Construction will be the developer. No one should have to put on a TIF after 2 hours of sitting through a city council meeting so far. So. Or at least Reed should come up and present it for me.
Nobody warned you this is going to be a long one?
No.
Where's your hourly rate?
More than what Mr. Greenwood wants to pay. Maybe if I could have Reed come up and help me, it might be a little more humorous anyway. So, as Justin said, this is for a tax increment district proposed number 27. It is an affordable housing project in the airport edition. Actually, Justin covered a lot of it. I will just add on to there, of course, that there are certain requirements under state law you have to meet to have a TIF approved. One of them requires that tax increment districts can't exceed 10% of the taxable value of the municipality. The taxable value in the city of Mitchell is $972,276,515, and the base so total base value of all TIFs, ongoing TIFs in Mitchell, to include this one if it was approved, is $18,445,000, so we're well within that 10% range.
I suppose that means you're going to be back for more.
I think so. I hope so. The amount of the TIF that Mr. Gronewig is asking for is $627,889. I think all of you in your packets probably got a copy of the project plan. So if you skip back to the schedules, Schedule 1. There's a breakdown of what those TIF costs will be used for. It's classified as a grant, which is under South Dakota state law is allowable. But we always like to show the city what those funds will be used for. The public infrastructure, the sewer, water, curb, gutter, sewer, those are $562,889, and Mr. Gronewig is going to be doing, to keep the cost down on there, he's going to be doing the cement work and some of that stuff himself, and so that helps to keep the lots down to an affordable amount. Professional fees, engineering, design, and legal is estimated to be at $65,000. Legal is a very small part of that.
Not after tonight, it is.
Yeah, we got to raise that just a little bit after today. So the total costs are $627,889. Again, this will be an affordable housing project, which means, as Justin said, that the homes that will be built out there have to comply with the South Dakota guide for affordable housing, which for Mitchell right now is $300,000, and that would include the cost of the lot and the initial construction. And Mr. Groeneweg feels that he can do that. We will put covenants on the property, which will include that requirement. I'd like to direct your attention, starting on page 10 of the project plan. This is the developer. There's a section called developer agreement, then there's developer terms, and conditions of the development agreement. So part of a TIF is that if you guys approve this tonight, then Justin and I will put together a development agreement, which we'll bring back to you at a future meeting, which will set forth some of these terms. But one of the things that have to take place, one, for this TIF to go into effect, one, it has to be classified as an affordable housing TIF by the Department of Revenue. We've sent them a preliminary draft of this project plan, and they've given us preliminary approval that it will qualify. So we've taken that step. This is the first affordable housing TIF, I believe, that's been in front, or at least being asked to be approved to go forward. And so part of the length of time that took to put this together was Stephanie and Justin and I working together on how are you going to police this? You know, how are we going to know if the houses meet the affordable criteria, and who's going to report that stuff? And so we've come up with, under the development terms, certain things like the developer will have to report to the city no later than November 15th of each year, the number of lots sold, and all that type of information, just so that the city will be able to have a record of what's going on out there. And so the thing with affordable housing is it's just the initial cost, or the sale price or construction. Now, if you put a house out there with an unfinished basement and maybe no garage, after that first year, the owner can go ahead and put those things on there. They can, the value can increase over time. It doesn't have to stay underneath that limit. We also will put in a condition in the deeds that they have to be owner occupied for at least 2 years, and so someone that buys a lot or buys a house will have to agree that it's going to be owner occupied for 2 years. One of the things that Paul asked for, and Justin and Stephanie agreed was in order, is he will be constructing all or most of the houses out there himself. And some of those will be spec homes, and it's conceivable with the economy today that a spec home may not sell right away. So we've asked the city to allow him to rent those if they haven't sold within 3 months, that he can rent those. And the rentals would have to also comply with the affordable rental rates that's put out. And so we've got, yes.
John, quick question. That last bullet point that is on here on page 12 indicates that if it goes over the affordable housing dollar amount, then it makes it ineligible for the TIF. What if as we're building, obviously this isn't going to happen in 1 year, but as the 300,000 slowly creeps up, does this TIF move with that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's whatever the current.
It's whatever the current value is.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
2 years ago, 250.
Right, and the cost of materials and everything else, the 300 is more than likely going up again.
Well, Stephanie would probably have maybe more information than the rest of us as to whether they're considering that. But there are some rumors that they're taking a look at that and looking at raising that now, just based on.
But we specifically asked that question, and they said they would go by the current first-time home buyers when it's sold.
Right. So we said there's 22 lots out there that can be built upon. Once they're all completed, we're estimating that the value will be That'll add to the tax base, will be $5,520,000, so that's a good addition. Gone over Schedule 1, the detail of the project costs, breakdown there. Mr. Gronewig has his financing in place with his local banker, and so there's a estimate that shows how the TIF would pay off. We think that the TIF will pay off. We've asked for 20 years, and because that's just the length you can have. If it pays off early, great, and we think that it could pay off as early as 2035, so if it's fully developed. And again, our projections don't take in any increases in valuations or anything like that, so.
So Don, will you be the only builder out there then?
Not necessarily. He'd sell a lot and other people can build. It's just not exclusive for him, but he's planning on being the major developer out there. But it's not a closed development. Right, Paul? Okay. Schedule 2, another thing that is required under the statute is an economic feasibility study. So there's, again, this is an affordable housing, workforce housing project. There's 26 lots, 4 of which have already been developed into single-family residential homes. All new homes built on the remaining 22 lots will have to be eligible as single-family affordable housing. The developer, Paul, has indicated that without the TIF, this project isn't really feasible. So, we might have a development that you build a house every 3 years and, it takes forever to fill up. And so with this TIF in place, it'll allow him to fill that up hopefully within 5 years.
Did you just say that all of the lots will be single-family home, no twin homes?
We haven't called for any twin homes here, but that's not an impossibility. They could build a twin home as long as they, each side would hit that affordable housing deal. We believe that the estimated increment, so the actual taxes, the value we think is going to be $5.5 million. The increment, if the TIF lasted for 20 years, it'd kick off $1,671,565. And again, so our TIF is only for a little under $700,000. So should pay off. There's schedules on page 21 that kind of shows the breakdown of the current assessment and how that will work out. We've estimated the homes out there actually kind of anywhere between $250,000 and $300,000. And of course, there'll be types of range out there. Another requirement is an economic development study. That starts on page 23. I'm not going to go through that. One of the things we have to find is that it's an area, a blighted area or an area of blight. South Dakota law defines an open space or an open area as blighted. This is 8 acres that's out there north of the lake, and it's pretty blighted, right, or pretty open right now, I can say that. There's a fiscal impact statement. Again, we're making the assumption that when the development's all built out, there'll be a minimum of $5,520,500 worth of improvements put out there in the houses. Tax increment will be started to be collected in 2024 and end prior to 2042. We believe it'll raise about $1,670,000 in tax. No zoning changes. It's zoned properly. Questions? Paul, you going to add?
I guess I just have one comment for council first. Several years ago, council made a change in the way we were doing some of the TIFs. Again, they are required to waive the discretionary formula so that increment is generated faster. They are done as a grant status, so there is no constitutional debt against the city for this. We have the accountability, excuse me, it's been a long meeting, the accountability built in through that reporting mechanism that we ask for annually. And then we are requiring it to be classified as economic development, which the affordable housing does, so that those taxes are spread statewide versus locally for the difference in the school tax. So those are the main things that council has asked that we continue to move forward with. And then just for a point of, I guess, just review, we've had several that have paid off over the past 2 years, I guess now. So our current list of TIFs is actually much smaller than when we first started. And then you'll see the last ones have all been done as grants. Vantage Point, Performance Pet, the Western Building, those have all been done as grants. The ones that are shaded, you can't really see those. Those are the ones that have either been dissolved or paid off now.
The city attorney has done a really good job and worked hard with Stephanie on coming up with basically a statement that at least in our mind makes it not count against the debt limit of the city, and that's a big deal.
Don doesn't pay me royalties for stealing that language for other cities either.
I have used it outside of Mitchell once or twice.
And just as Don briefly mentioned, we would be bringing back a developer's agreement in the future. So many of the terms that you've heard us talk about here tonight, you'll be getting back in the future in even more detail. So.
And the lots that are excluded, the shaded ones,
They've been sold to a third party who may already
so they're outside of
they'll be outside of the TIF, and because he may or may not develop that as affordable housing, and so we don't want to risk the whole TIF for 2 lots.
Because if they ended up going over, we didn't want to have the possibility that it would invalidate the rest of the TIF. So those are the 2 in the dark.
In the dark gray.
Darker color there.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle. Second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Steve Simpson. I wasn't intending to speak tonight, but I went to a presentation put on by a professor out of Iowa and Yankton a number of years ago talking about TIFs. And they were originally designed to restore economic vitality to a blighted area. And what I've seen in this community, both at the city level and the county level, is they're being used to reduce the cost to wealthy real estate developers. So what we are doing here is we are actually giving tax breaks to these properties, and the rest of us who do not have a TIF end up paying a greater share of the property taxes in this community. And in this particular case, it may be to produce affordable housing for some people, but I don't know if you've seen your assessed valuation of your homes recently, but the one I just received shows a huge increase in the assessed valuation of my house. And what we're going to do here is I'll be paying a non-TIF person as the rest of all the members of this community who do not have a TIF end up paying more property taxes, and then we may indeed find the fact that we are now in unaffordable housing ourselves. So just wanted to let you guys know a general principle of what I've learned about these TIFs, and now we're up to 27, and it is concerning to me that we're doing so many of these TIFs. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address this?
Well, I can answer some of that. First of all, the developers pay their property tax just like Mr. Simpson pays his property tax. The school districts are held harmless, and so they're made up by the taxes from all over the state, so you don't see an increase in that. The cities and the county don't use their tax part go to the developer to pay for the public infrastructure, but the developer's still paying taxes. And the South Dakota legislature has specifically stated that affordable housing is a proper TIF project. In fact, they're recommending how to do that because there's not too many other ways to get them done. So I disagree with Steve on saying that it's a tax break. Nobody's taxes in Mitchell are going up because there's a TIF.
I also do want to just clarify, we currently only have 11 TIFs. It's named 27 just in the order, but currently we have 11 active.
Okay, anybody else wish to address this? Comment?
I disagree with that too. We have houses going up there right now, and there's 2 of them out there, and it's a $280,000 house that would probably sell for $320 if we didn't have the TIF. So that's it.
State your name.
Paul Gernowig. Sorry.
No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Anybody else wish to address this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-11, plat of lots A and B in Block 10 of ST Greens Edition, a replat of lots 10, 11, and 12 in Block 10 of ST Greens Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is requested by Robert D. Coomer, representing Larry Wiseman.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval 4-0 with 3 absent. You previously approved the variances that go along with this. As you can see, the middle line jogs over because the house on lot 1 was too close, so they had to have it on the, jog it back to get around the garage on the back side, and so I can answer any questions you have.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-12, plat of Lot A and Lot B in Block 2 of Robert Wilkinson's addition, a vacant replat of Lot 5 and Lot 6 of Robert Wilkinson's addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, as requested by Robert D. Coomer of Infrastructure Design, representing Corey Merritt. Mr. Jennings.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommend approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. As you can see, we'll have 2 lots now instead of the 1. There's already the existing house on Lot A, and Lot B will have a new one. It'll also clean up the GIS to show the vacated alley and the vacated street. It doesn't have that. That'll take care of this as well.
Motion approved.
Motion by Mr. Savers.
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-13, plat of Lot 4, Block 5, Woodland Heights, First Edition, subdivision of Lot 2, Cranes Edition, southeast quarter of Section 34, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, requested by Ethan Co-op Lumber.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommend approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. It follows the master plan. No issues from Public Works.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Charts, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-14, plat of lots 1 and 2 of Rocky Todd Edition, a subdivision of Lot 12A-3 in the the southwest quarter of Section 10, Township 103 North, Range 60 West of the 5th Prime Meridian. City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, is requested by Todd Boyd.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. Kay Everson owns both lots 1 and 2 currently. Rocky Newenhausen will purchase lot 1. Todd Boyd will purchase lot 2. Todd has all the storage units to the north of all of this. There is also an easement that is on the plat that goes from Main Street all the way back to lot 2 where it jogs over to the north. So that's on there, and then there's also the water easement back further on lot 2, city's water main.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. I want to note that Kay Everson is no relation. So. Okay. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2022-15, 15, plat lots 29A, 38, 31A, and 32A, Block 10, Sunnyside Addition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, is requested by Jeff Larson. Janice.
Mayor, Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. There was some discussion with this because there will be 2 twin homes that go onto it, or duplexes. They'll go 29 and 30 will be one, and then 31 and 32 will be a second. Discussion during it is the lots that are there right now are 47 and 48 feet roughly. So they'll have to put the 2 lots together at DOE, get a building permit, because now it'll fit within the regulations of the ordinance for lot width. Because for a 2-dwelling, it can be 75 feet, and now you'll be at 96 feet. Now they build it, they go to sell it, 48 feet and 48 feet, they're non-conforming lots, but we can't stop them from selling lots as a city. So if they ever ask for another building permit, they'll have to come in for variances. You can do it one of 2 ways. You can do it like this and plat the 4 of them. It's much cleaner, or you can plat it as one big one and sell the east half and the west half. Title companies prefer it to be the actual plats instead of by footage.
So we'll see this coming back from
If they wish to put a deck on, or potentially, yes, there could be some down the road. Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mrs. Charles. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll be abstaining due to the fact of the association with the company.
Okay. Further discussion, anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 1 abstention. Action to approve resolution R 2022-16, plat of lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, Block 2 MLC addition to subdivision Block 3 and Lot 4B, Block 4, Morning View addition to the City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota, requested by Muller Lumber. Mr. Janice.
Mayor and Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. It was found out that Block 3 was left off of the legal description for all of those lots when it was platted originally. So actually, I believe it was a title company that found this. So they requested an affidavit of correction. Usually, that is just signed by the surveyor. It gets filed at the Register of Deeds. Title company actually wished for it to go back through, have Planning Commission, City Council, and Department of Equalization also sign that they got the correction, and then it'll get filed again to go back with the original plat. So it's just cleaning up an error that was previously done.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. McCarville. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action on resolution R 2022-17 declaring surplus real property, appointing appraisal board, and authorizing sale via broker. Mr. Johnson.
All right. Well, I can't give you an easy address for this one, but we've talked about it in the last couple of meetings. This would be the lot at 15th in Minnesota that was just recently rezoned. There's no street address for it, but there is a big ugly legal, which I'm not going to read for you. But basically, if the intention for this is going to be declare it surplus, list it with a broker, and then accept the offer that's most favorable to the city. There was past discussion about whether we would list any conditions on requiring development or anything, but based on past comments, it doesn't sound like there was interest in doing so. So it sounds like this would just be a normal sale. We would just list it with the broker, go through the traditional process there. Council would eventually come back and act on approving that best offer. And I know that this is part of a larger process and hopefully facilitating the efforts of Mitchell Area Development Corporation's Affordable Housing Initiative. But this would be the first step. And then there's a couple more procedural hoops that we'll have to jump through as far as signing the listing agreement, publishing notice, and that kind of stuff. But any questions, I'll open it up for that, or any public comments.
So we're not putting those stipulations on that they have to build?
and so on.
So that's ultimately council's decision on whether you want to include any of those. The comments that I had received is we would not be putting any of those conditions on there, so, you know, if the neighbors got together and wanted to purchase it, they could keep it as open space. If somebody wants to buy it and build a house there, we know that that's feasible as well, so we would, I guess at this point, the intention would be to leave that open unless council gives other direction.
I don't have a problem with the neighbors buying it and doing what they want with it as long as we get market value for it. But if there is a house that is built, can we say if, that we can come up with at least a square footage that we make sure that it fits the neighborhood?
I guess this is kind of testing my memory on the size and location of a lot, but I think the buildable space on there would kind of limit a structure to something that would be basically in compliance or, you know, conform with the neighborhood.
It'd be very close to what's going north on.
Right, if they wanted to build something larger.
Those are less than 1,000 square feet that we looked at the other day, but I don't know why this number is in my mind, but I was thinking 1,100 because it's a little bigger lot. But again.
That's what they were looking at putting on, or Mahi was looking at having an 1,100 to 1,200 square foot house.
And Joe just corrected me here that the buildable space on there is actually close to 6,000 square feet. So you could fit.
Build off of Minnesota.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure, that would be the first one. I'd like to see a stipulation in case there is a house that goes there. That was the concern of the neighbors. Oops, sorry. That was the concern of the neighbors is they would have some type of a home that just did not fit the neighborhood. So I think the best way to assure that would be the amount of square feet that the house could potentially be. And if it is, if the neighborhood decides to buy it, keep it green or do whatever with it, we're not forcing them to build a house, but if there's a developer that does buy it, then at least there is a square footage they have to abide by.
And I'd like to see that square footage, a minimum of 1,200 square feet. Minimum. They can do bigger.
So you want stipulation that the neighbors can buy it? You're kind of getting into.
If there's a home that's built that it needs, Danny wants 1,200, I can live with that. But if there's a home built, then it has to be a 1,200 square foot house.
But if they want to leave it a green space, fine too.
That'd be similar to the ones that are to the north of there that we looked on the map 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Well, it could be.
1,200 bigger.
Motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Or no less than 1,200?
No less than 1,200.
If it's going to be improved, yep.
Right.
I'll find a way to make it work.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion?
There is some neighbors out here, I don't know if they want to talk.
Come up. Anybody want to speak to this? Come on up. You want to buy the lot?
He wants to be on the board.
Dwight Stadler, Ward 4. I imagine there's some of you are wishing you had an exorcist here about now. So, I'm not necessarily opposed to what you're proposing here, but when I drive around Mitchell, the one thing Mitchell can never be accused of is having tract housing. And if you don't know what tract housing is, when we were in California, when we lived out there, developers would build a tract of homes. And about every third home was the same exact floor plan. Different paint scheme on the front of the house, but you had no variety. Here, there's all kinds of variety when you drive around town. I think with that neighborhood over there, and I don't know what the residents of that area have told you, but it would seem to me you'd want something that matches with the theme that's there now. Not to create a tract housing scenario, but not to create an anomaly. You don't want to, I just can't see creating an anomaly over there that just doesn't fit. Does that, and I hope that makes sense of what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say use some common sense in how you designate areas.
The houses to the north are roughly 1,200, 1,100 square feet. That's how that number. The houses to the north on Minnesota.
Yeah.
So they're roughly the same size.
So that's about the same.
As you go west, which is actually R4, they're much bigger.
On 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the one directly north?
We have rezoned it R3 to be the more stringent requirement, but they would meet what is going north on Minnesota.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
This one is 1156, this one is 985.
Okay. Thank you.
So one question, Mayor. So we're going to go through the process, and I think this is going to be a good process, and we've come up with an appraisal, and then we have to be within 90% of that appraisal. Is that right, Justin?
No, the appraisal in this case is not binding, so ultimately the council is going to be able to take whatever offer they feel is most appropriate.
Okay. And I guess it kind of begs the question of, in this day and age, there's bidding wars. So do we just say first come, first serve, or do we allow people to possibly bid others up?
Well, it'll be through a broker, so, the broker it'll be just like we did with the lot north of James. A broker's listing it, that broker will bring us an offer, and we can make a decision to approve or disapprove it, or counter offer, or whatever we want to do. Okay. All right?
I did receive a letter requesting that we should have this up for auction as opposed to giving it to a single realtor. Her concern was that that wasn't fair to the other realtors in town, but, and that it should be put up on auction. I just thought I would represent
You
that.
want to auction it to them?
I'm just telling you what was suggested.
How do they propose to auction it, I guess? I don't know.
I guess they're saying auction the property itself, not auction it to the realtors, to have them bid.
Well, that generally doesn't work well for us when we try to sell things. In this case, we are listing it for a price.
We can ask the realtor what their percentage is, and then we could select the one that we feel is going to. Oh, it's already done?
We've been talking with them.
Okay.
Justin's got it.
We're in the process of trying to hammer out some details, but we should be able to do that once we've got the authorization.
Right. Okay. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this further? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action on Resolution R 2022-18, setting a hearing and appointing an appraisal board in relation to transfer of 514 North Main property.
I guess that's me again.
You again.
All right, so this would be in relation to what's now being used as the scoreboard and what's now being used as the Mitchell Republic building. As the council is aware, the city actually owns the building being used by the Mitchell Republic right now. We lease that to the Chamber of Commerce, and then they sublease that to the paper. The Chamber of Commerce owns the scoreboard property, which is leased to, I don't know the company name, but the operators of the scoreboard. In the past, it's been discussed that we would swap those properties so that we could incorporate the scoreboard lot into the plaza space a little bit more completely. So this would really just be the preliminary step in facilitating that exchange. So there's a few procedural hoops that we'd have to jump through after this. We need to have a hearing, we need to have the property appraised, but this would be the first step in that process. And I guess one other thing I should point out, when the city did purchase I guess we called it the Northwestern building at that time, it came with the parking lot that we've done or redone in the meantime, and this transaction wouldn't change anything with the parking lot. The city would maintain ownership of that. This would just be for the
Just so I
the building.
understand, the appraisal is of the scoreboard or the Northwestern Public?
That would be for the city property. Yep, so it'd be the Northwestern building being appraised by the board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Savers, second by Mrs. Charles. Further discussion? Did you have a question?
I guess not.
Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to address this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. First reading on ordinance 0202206, amending Woodland Heights Plan Unit Development. Mr. Jennings.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Planning Commission recommended approval of this 4-0 with 3 absent. We did receive one letter in favor of this post packet being put together. So lots 10, 11, and 12 were never included in any of the sub areas that in the plan unit development. I think from what I've talked to people from the past is there was talk of these becoming an apartment or something like that, a 12-plex, and they didn't know what they were going to do at that time, so they just didn't put these with any of the sub areas. Ethan Co-op would like to put twin homes on these 3 lots, so sub-area C fits with that. They do not intend to put any 12-plex or apartment building or anything like that. They actually submitted a plan that shows 3 different duplexes on those. I can answer any questions that you have.
Move to place on first reading.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. First reading on ordinance 2022-07, supplemental appropriations. Ms. Zelwin.
Mayor and council, I gave a pretty lengthy overview of the supplemental appropriations in the packet for everyone to review. I will make just a couple things, point out a couple things. Starting with the general fund, the revenue versus expenditures, what we had for restricted grant revenue that we can't factor into this, what we have for funds committed in next year's budget, gave us a net of what was estimated to be available. Of that net, we have $1.2 million in requested supplements. Most of those items are items that were either started in 2020 and didn't get completed, or it's projects that were unanticipated. We had some major repairs to make. I will make a couple items just note. The 5th and 9th Street projects that we talked about earlier, those supplemental appropriations are included in here. Those would be new. Not coming out of, I mean, they were not, excuse me, they're not already started, but it was planned in 2022. We're just adding to that amount. I wanted to get into my transfers out. Okay. I did want to point out also in the other financing uses, I did include the transfer out to EMS in the amount of $224. Earlier this year, council authorized the purchase or the 2 refurbish or the new chassis for the boxes to go on top of. At the time, we talked about using contingency. By doing this, it would eliminate that need to tie up our 2022 contingency, which we think is really important with seeing fuel prices and all of our bids coming over the expected amount. Another one, likewise, I'll point out was in Park and Rec. It did look like they had a lot of fund balance at the beginning of the year, but that's because they had major projects that were started in 2021 that were rolling to 2022, and those included cash supplements from the general fund. The turf project would be one. We have ice arena compressors. I know that's not the right word that we used before. Sorry. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is when we originally did the bid for the remodeling project at the rec center, it came in above what we thought budget was going to be. We did apply some of those funds from last year into this year's budget, but we are also asking for The remaining amount was necessary to include the HVAC in that remodeling plan. Without that, the space is really not usable in the summertime, and they do have intended uses for that to be their cardio and other room. One other item in Park and Rec. We had talked about, it should be under Parks, oh, here it is, sorry. The city had earlier this year discussed, if needed, using contingency in the amount of up to $20,000 for the installation costs of playground equipment that is being completely donated by the Kiwanis Club. They did have enough funds left in their budget from last year that we're able to do it as a supplemental appropriation, and you will not have to use 2022 contingency. The remaining items are really just projects that were not completed from previous years. I will point out the lake, just because there might be some questions on that in the general public when they look at this. We used to have the lake cost, expenses and revenue as part of the water fund. If you remember, in 2022, we broke that budget out into its own fund. So you'll see a transfer out to lake. That's just the remaining budget items from 2021 that were funded by lake proceeds, that we're now going to move those into the lake fund. So we're transferring that cash for those projects into the lake fund for this year. And then the golf fund, I will point out that one too, since it's an enterprise fund. They did show cash balance. It was maybe higher at the beginning of the year, but when you look at our funds committed in the 22 budget and the supplements, that brings it down to 165, and $100,000 of that was revenue that they received from the general fund from city council last year to purchase the golf carts, which has not been completed. So you'll see that fund come way down too. And then the only last thing that I guess I will point out to council, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have. I did show that you could potentially designate some more funds. Mostly that's from revenue that we've received in grant funds over the past 2 years with ARPA, but $2.5 million towards future capital projects. The council could then either apply that to some of the projects that are going over, or lake project or other project coming up. If you remember, the city applied for EDA grant for outdoor recreation, and that was going to help fund the jetty and the marina. And we do have at least a preliminary, I don't know what you would say, it's not really an approval yet, but we've passed the first hurdle.
It's looking good for that money.
So I'm asking that you also would set aside the required matching funds for that project. And then the last item there would be, whoa, sorry. Just about jumping off my chair. We talk a lot about assessment, housing developments coming up, and we have an assessment fund that we use now for infrastructure projects, but you do have to have cash in there to fund some of those assessments, so it would give us the ability to put some cash in there for future assessment projects. This is not something that you would be taking action on first reading. It would be something that we would take action on following the supplemental appropriations next month or next meeting as a resolution. I just wanted to show those to council and kind of give you feedback on where I think that looks. With those supplemental appropriations as well as those designations, that would put your unobligated cash balance at about $6.8 million. It's about 30% of fiscal year 2022 revenue. I do feel pretty good about this year's budget. We did not bring our revenue budget up very high, and we ended the year last year much higher than we anticipated. But I am going to be earmarking a part of 2022 contingency right away for increased fuel costs, project overruns, and potential loss of revenue. So by doing the appropriation ordinance, you will not need any of those previous discussions out of contingency funds. And I can answer any other questions that you have. I did give a line item detail on each item and where the source of funding is coming from. And there was also this detail too that showed each individual line, why it was being committed, and each of the fund overviews. Are there any questions? And this is first reading.
advertised on first reading. Second. Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address any of this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, discussion on 5G in Mitchell. Mrs. Bauer had asked that she be put on the agenda, so we have put her on for a presentation on 5G. You are limited to 10 minutes once you begin.
I'm going to pass those around. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity to get the abundance of scientific proof regarding the lack of safety of wireless communications to you and the public. I'm sure you're tired. It's been a long day. In regards to the myth of safety, as outlined in Verizon's information, I would simply point out two things. One, they claim that their signal is only a fraction of what the FCC allows. However, the limit that the FCC set was astronomically higher than what safe levels really are. And per the court case and 11,000 pages of scientific evidence, that claim is substantiated. Two, Verizon and AT in particular are using C-band, which is a much higher hertz. They're actually using gigahertz rather than megahertz. This causes more damage because the waves are even shorter, or millimeter waves. Verizon and AT&T are using 30 to 300 gigahertz, which is almost 100 times what 4G was using. And 4G was also above safe levels. Some cell phones from the last few years have been found to operate at 5 times the legal limit. I can't imagine how much higher than the legal limit the new 5G phones actually are. I've used my meter to test other people's 5G phones and found they maxed my meter out, which is more than 100 times what scientists consider safe. Because it maxes out, I have no idea how much over 100 times safe it actually is. The FCC is using guidelines from 1996, which means they are using data on wireless safety from pre-1996. They've simply ignored the 11,000 pages of scientific evidence that has been brought to light from scientific studies done since that time, which proves without a doubt that wireless communications are unsafe. The Children's Health Defense and the Environmental Health Trust jointly sued the FCC in federal court and won, as I submitted in my agenda information. The FCC was ordered to go back and look at those 11,000 pages to redetermine safe levels. You may think the FCC was unaware of this information, but not only is it their responsibility to know it, they were made aware of the many people whose health was suffering from wireless through the FCC open forum online, asking if people were having any issues. But the FCC chose to ignore those pleas for help as well. The U.S. Government Accountability Office told the FCC in 2013 to review their 1996 limits in light of new research, but the FCC ignored this as well. The FCC also claims to follow the WHO in regards to wireless communications, considering the WHO has participated in studies that show harm from wireless and 5G, as well as cautioning that 5G causes harm. It shows the FCC ignores all authority, and thus their claims of safety are negated, further showing that all information of facts versus myths from the cell phone companies is based on false parameters. Why would the FCC ignore such information when they knew it existed? They are what is called a captured agency. An extremely large portion of their funding comes from the sector that they are supposed to be regulating. Just how common is electrohypersensitivity? It ranges from 1.5% in Sweden up to 13.3% in Taiwan. Even if we assumed only 0.1% of the population was affected, that would be 7 million people. I would venture to say that number is falsely low due to the lack of people being able to get a diagnosis for their symptoms. Most people I know who are suffering have no diagnosis and have not informed any agency that might calculate these numbers of their condition. If you compare that to the WHO Global Burden of Disease report, it shows a similar incidence to strokes. However, electrohypersensitivity is even more common than congestive heart failure or Parkinson's, and it is more common than breast, lung, prostate, colon cancer all combined. Since 1990, there's been a rise in fibromyalgia of 7,727%, an 11,027% jump in chronic fatigue, a whopping 10,833% increase in youth bipolar diagnoses, a 430% rise in sleep apnea, 819% rise in ADHD, and 299% increase in Alzheimer's, and 449% increase in osteoarthritis. Ever wonder why so many people have joint replacements? Why there are so many children with ADHD? So does it really make sense to ignore such numbers so an industry can rake in profits while creating healthcare crises for millions of people, which costs our country money in healthcare dollars and lost wages of those affected when the industry sits back and counts their money? Sadly, children are the most at risk from EMF and 5G. I would also remind you of New Hampshire's halt on 5G for safety reasons. The City Board of Health in Pittsfield, Massachusetts voted to send a cease and desist regarding a Verizon cell tower after several neighbors became sick when a cell tower was powered up in that area. As well as New Hampshire legislature has voted to send historic legislation on cell tower radiation to interim study after hearing extensive testimony regarding the health effects of cell tower radiation, which I included that information as well. A group of mayors in Ohio are working to stop 5G from coming into that area, and the Massachusetts Medical Association voted to adopt a resolution calling for more research and evidence-based data on the effects of radio frequency radiation on human health. Clearly, they've seen enough evidence to warrant such research. I'm not against internet, phones, or any other devices people use on a daily basis. All I'm saying is that we need to do it safely, and 5G is simply not safe. 5G is not just the next step in wireless, like going from 3G to 4G. The step from 4G to 5G is astronomically higher because they are using wavelengths that are much shorter and known to be much more harmful to humans than 4G. 4G is still harmful, just much less so. Once you have symptoms, it means your DNA has been damaged and it's too late. You will never be the same again. When you consider how many teens and adults take their phones to bed with them or put them next to them on a headboard or shelf or a nightstand, we need to be concerned about how many people are going to be sick in the future from this when 7 million people already are. I will leave you with this. In September 2017, more than 180 scientists and doctors from 35 countries called for a moratorium on 5G. Additionally, 230 international EMF scientists appealed to the UN in 2015 regarding non-ionizing EMF exposure. In February 2019, the FCC admitted that there were no 5G safety studies conducted by their agency, nor were they planning to do any. If you are still trusting the FCC for your safety and no alarms are going off in your head about this, they should be. Thank you for your time. I know Sonia also has something to present.
You got 3 minutes, so
Okay,
you
that's
gotta
fine.
talk fast.
Okay, I've got 3 handouts for you. Sonia Vanderbrick, Mitchell Township. I want to show you what she was talking about. This, for example, this is the Bio Initiative from 2012. This is about 1,700 pages. This was a rationale for biologically based exposure standards for low-intensity electromagnetic radiation. Well, what did that entail? I'll get to that here. Okay, so this included 14 scientists, health and public policy experts to document the scientific evidence of this effect on people. So if they did this in 2012, before they even had 5G rolled out, I wonder what it will be now. Now, like Beth said, there is not the 5G research out there to say that it's safe. So the burden of proof needs to be on the cellular companies and it needs to be on the FCC. With the ruling of the Supreme Court on the East Coast, we know that they haven't had that burden of proof, and you can't have the same companies regulating themselves. That would be like the cannabis companies regulating themselves. They need to be regulated by someone that doesn't have a stake in it. So there's been some question about whether there's really 5G in Mitchell. There is. There's at least 3 in Mitchell. I've gone around personally and tested all of the towers with this meter. It's a professional meter, and it'll show you what the frequencies are, and most of the ones that I've seen, they'll go off the charts of peaking at 20 milliwatts per meter squared, and you can use this to see what it's like, you know, in your house and wherever. So I guess our concern here for the City Council is you all are greatly concerned about the health of the community, and so are we. and we know you've been here late tonight, and we really want you to think twice about allowing more 5G in the community. And because 5G can be put on houses, it can be put in these internet cubes in your house, and there's no recourse for your neighbor, okay? If they don't know if it's safe or not, how can we allow this into our community? Because literally it could be hundreds of these all around, okay? We already know people are having side effects, but the other thing is it allows for surveillance, data mining, and people can track everything you do, and they can dial it up. And one thing I found interesting that I didn't know this until the other night when I was looking is insurance companies do not insure for long-term damages from electromagnetic radiation emitted by these towers. 5G, cell tower radiation, and electromagnetic fields are all repeatedly classified as high risk and compared to asbestos in insurance white papers. So what's the city's liability risk for allowing these 5G antennas to be put up? And I would say, what's the liability for the FCC? Are they going to be held accountable? So all in all, there are local ordinances that have been restricting these 5G and small towers. I'm obviously not going to be able to go through all of those, but I do have information for you on where we can go about in doing that. But I'd please have you look at all that information, and I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.